10 for a quorum. Oh, you can keep talking. Nothing happens till I get a few more council members here. We do also have a number of presentations this morning. As soon as I get one more council member, I'm going to start on the presentations. And by the time we're all done, we'll be ready to do real city business. And I need one more council member. Okay, Mr. Chick, Mr. Fewer, Wendy Thomas, Mr. Savornich, Mr. Wax, Walters. Council members, we're now going to begin the presentations. Yeah, well, it's a slow countdown, I have to tell you. That's all right, you're not it. You're only number 5. All right, ladies and gentlemen, although we do not yet have enough council members to begin the formal business, this is Friday when we do all the interesting stuff. And so we are going to begin our presentations even though we don't have an entire quorum. And the chair is first going to call on Ms. Mizikowski, who was the first one here.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to invite up the representatives who are here from Nissan North America and close the deal. Members of the council, this is the second year we have embarked on a project that was sponsored last year, co-sponsored by Nissan North America, and Close the Deal, which is a nonprofit organization serving more than 70 local training and counseling agencies in the area. What this program has been called is Retire Your Attire. And I know each of the council offices had a cardboard box, a wardrobe delivered to the offices so that we could bring in city employees clothing that could be used for people who are about to re-enter the job market. After training, after assistance, after help to get their lives back, to get the training that might be useful today in the open market. One of the impediments or one of the concerns that they might have is, gee, they don't have the right kind of clothing to appear presentable in a job market today. So this program, Retire Your Attire, has been a focus to help us collect men's and women's clothing in ready-to-wear condition, suits, shirts, business blouses, slacks, ties, and other accessories, briefcases and the like, so that we can help outfit and equip people who are ready to join the job market or re-enter the job market and give them that head start. This is the second year in the city, but as I understand, this has been going on elsewhere, and in fact, just recently has been made a nationwide program. It has been successful with the sponsorship of Nissan and its various partners in collecting tens of thousands of articles of clothing that are providing assistance for people to help change their life and brighten their economic horizon. I am very happy that with us today are representatives of Nissan North America, Terry Hernandez, and also from Close the Deal, the nonprofit organization that deals with many, many other local training and counseling agencies. We have Deborah Brusevich and Dan Miller, and they are here today as representatives, one, to help pick up the clothing that we have been providing throughout the week, but to receive this, which is the resolution where the City Council commends the partnership between Nissan North America and Close the Deal for the second annual Retire Your Attire clothing drive, and continue to urge city employees to participate by donating your useful business apparel and extend the life of your clothing to people that it is going to make a difference. So on behalf of the City Council, I'm very happy to present this to these representatives who are here and ask them if they would like to speak and tell us a little bit about the success of the program nationwide. Terry?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Nissan's very pleased that Retire Your Attire has been such a success here in City Hall. Last year, between Los Angeles, Sacramento, and Washington, D.C., 100,000 pieces were collected for the needy. So we're very proud, and we're very excited that we continue to get the support here, and we look forward to seeing you again next year.
Thank you.
I'm now going to call on Mr. Pacheco for two presentations. No, one presentation. One presentation, second person in. You ready? No, all right. We'll try Mr. Hernandez. Are you ready to do yours? Yeah, that's fine.
Madam Chair, members of the council, I have three presentations today. I thought I'd start with the folks who are going to stay first because I got to get them back to work right away, and then move on to the folks who might be leaving us. Members of the council, it's my honor to recognize a group that shouldn't be unfamiliar in our districts, but someone who's been doing a lot of work and proactive work in my district, and I just thought it was time that they be recognized formally by me because my constituents appreciate their work. And I'd like the PACE team to please come up if they don't mind. All of you can come up. All of you can come up. And I particularly have I work particularly with Sam Portillo, and I just wanted Sam also to be recognized individually, if you guys don't mind, because he's the senior inspector. I'm presenting what I call the Heart of Los Angeles Award. It's an award that I put together after the civil unrest, and I give it out periodically in my district for people who do outstanding and dedicated service in the First Council District. That benefits, I believe, the whole of the city. And I wanted to recognize the proactive code enforcement team. They worked in the areas like Pico Union and Westlake. They also worked the commercial corridor of Pico Boulevard. The PACE team surveyed these areas in order to eliminate violations which affect the quality of life issues, including commercial and residential building maintenance, trash debris, excessive vegetation, unimproved storage of inoperative vehicles, unapproved signs, illegal uses of land. That includes auto repair, recycling centers, illegal swap meets, and illegal street vendors and graffiti. You need to know that some of the specific locations in which PACE worked, they were very instrumental in eliminating and securing cleaning of basically abandoned car wash occupied by transits next to a child care center in my district. They eliminated an abandoned recycling center occupied by transits and used for drug dealing. They closed down an illegal outdoor swap meet. They removed an illegal newsstand used primarily to basically elicit or to sell illegal cigarettes, both to minors and adults. They discontinued and vacated an illegal indoor swap meet involved with illegal gang and drug activity. They vacated an illegal drug treatment facility adjacent to St. Sophia's, the Greek church, the Greek Orthodox, thank you. They removed illegally installed vending machines and basically removed 54 inoperative vehicles from various locations in Rampart. The PACE team surveyed over 2,389 sites in Council District 1, and of those, a total of 1,341 citations and orders to comply were issued. To date, the team has achieved an overall compliance of 91%. The department anticipates the remaining 9% of those sites still in violation will be brought into compliance within the next 30 days. I want to mention this because as the PACE team's been doing its work, it does it in a way where first they serve notice to the community that they're going to be there, to then go out and basically cite the violators, and then they follow through in the process. In terms of illegal street vending, you need to understand that we have a city attorney who was overwhelmed and a judge system or a court system that didn't understand why the city was doing all this. But if you live in that environment and you understand what it does to the quality of life, I think you understand the importance of the work of building and safety in the PACE team for that community. And so again, it's my honor, and I kind of sit here because at first I was questioning PACE. I wanted to know what they do. And Sam Portillo pretty much showed me what they did. And for that, I wanted to recognize the PACE team as well as building and safety. I think you have found me to be an advocate for PACE now. I think that we all deserve these kinds of teams working in our council districts, and I want to recognize them for their extraordinary efforts.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I did not know Mr. Edelman was here, but I would have recognized him before you, Sam. That's called protocol.
Thank you, Councilmember. PACE is an example of how when we work with the community proactively, we can come together and achieve results. What they do, the magic about their work is that they do not just go do something, but they first talk to the council office and then the community and find out what is needed by the community and what are the specific issues within the community and go out and address the specific issues and collaborate and cooperate with the community, and that is why the result has been so positive, and thank you for your support. And Councilmember Chick and many others, as well as I want to send a special thanks to City Attorney James Hahn, who has allowed us to collaboratively work with his staff, and several of deputy attorneys are here. PACE has worked in several districts, including Councilmember Ridley Thomas's district, Councilmember many other districts, and thank you for your support. I want to ask the leader of one of the team, Mr. Sam Portillo, to say a couple of words.
Good morning. I just want to thank the council for allowing us to work in their district. We've had nothing but support from Mike Hernandez, Jorge Baraka, and all the rest of the staff, Mr. Reyes, everyone involved. The community has really taken up behind us, and like Mike said, it was nice to be able to show them what we were able to do. So I hope we can do it for the rest of you. Thank you.
You've always wanted to show a council member what you can do, haven't you? Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you.
You have some more presentations.
I have two more
do you not? Go right
presentations.
ahead.
Could I call up Councilman Jim Breland? Oh, Mayor, I'm sorry, I demoted him. Weren't you a councilman when I first met you, or were you already the mayor? Okay. I was up in Monterey and at a conference, an economic development conference, and the councilman from Pacifica comes up to me, and he wanted to introduce himself because he said he's now working for the city of Los Angeles. And I kind of thought Pacifica and Los Angeles had some distance between them. But it's my honor today, members of the council, to recognize not only the mayor of Pacifica, but a valued employee of the city of Los Angeles, and that's Mr. Jim Breland. Jim basically worked with us and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency on our brownfield programs, a concept of prioritizing the reuse of underutilized industrial land. The City of Los Angeles has applied and received a U.S. EPA brownfield funding in 1996 and Community Showcase designation in 1998 and received a $500,000 in total U.S. EPA support grants to date. The City of Los Angeles has used brownfields showcase community funding to hire a U.S. EPA employee, and that's Jim Breland, to serve as the city's first brownfields manager and to coordinate the city's program. And Mr. Breland has helped us to facilitate the development of the city's brownfield work program, its interdepartmental team approach, and the creation of the city's unique brownfield executive and resource team project management structure. Since then, the city has received much national acclaim for its innovative approach and a strong commitment totaling over $5 million in direct support. And I don't know how much in loans because it has XXX on my form, so you might be able to tell me. For redevelopments of its brownfield properties. James Breland has tirelessly served in the capacity for the past 5 years and has overseen the development of its work plan to its current stage, which includes at least 50 brownfield projects. Therefore, by presenting this resolution, and it's signed by myself and Councilmember Ridley Thomas and the Council President Ruth Galanter and Councilmember Nate Holden, as well as our city clerk, Michael Carey. Is that more employees than Pacifica has? It's close, okay. Therefore, be it resolved that by the adoption of this resolution, the Council of the City of Los Angeles does hereby acknowledge its appreciation on behalf of the city, its businesses, and its citizens, and does hereby extend a thanks to James Breland for his tireless and exceptional public service that has made the city of Los Angeles a better place to live and work. And again, those of us who have brownfields and understand the need for the cleanup of those brownfields, this was the beginning of a program in the city of Los Angeles that I hope will continue and has to continue. And Jim, you set it all up for us, and I want to recognize you for that.
And before you say anything, I just want to point out that you are looking at an example of any kind of interagency cooperation you can think up. Jim embodies, as part of his work with us, the City of Los Angeles working with other municipalities, working with federal agencies, working with our proprietary departments, working with all the rest of those agencies, and he's still ambulatory. So, thank you, Jim. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Councilmember Hernandez, for this honor. It really has been an honor for me to be part of the extended family in Los Angeles and working with the folks who really started the Brownfields program. And I wanted to thank them and thank Lillian Kawasaki for her leadership early on when the program started in '96, and thank Deputy Mayor Rocky Delgadillo for his continued support, Administrator Charlin from the Redevelopment Agency, and Dee Allen from the Environmental Affairs Department. Those four executives have helped make this program the success that it is. And as I said at one of my going away lunches the other day, one of my goals this past year was to make sure the program was going to exist after EPA's direct support. And I think we're there, and I think the city is going to have a very strong program. And it's been an honor working for the city, and it's been an honor working for you. And I look forward to continuing efforts down here working for the Environmental Protection Agency as I transition back home and learn how to be a father of my 3-month-old. So I'm looking forward to that too. So thank you, Madam President.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Have one more.
I know.
Members of the council, now we get to say goodbye to someone I've known much longer than Jim, but has also become part of, I guess, in an indirect way, my extended family when we talk about my work with the city and the Community Development Department. Could Diane Nave please come up? I'm not going to read all the whereases. I just have a few words to say, but in my own style, I want to say some personal remarks because every now and then, as I chair the Community Economic Development Committee, I have the opportunity to talk to staff, particularly at the committee level. And Diane never cried at the committee level. But I always found her to be very informative. Particularly when it came to some of the youth employment programs that we're trying to work with in the city of Los Angeles. Very understanding and someone who promoted those programs. And I wanted to personally say that one reason why so many things went through my committee as easy as they did was because of you, Diane. So I want to thank you for that work. She began her career with the city of Los Angeles November 12th, This morning I told my staff they were full of mistakes, but this is 1885. Does anybody believe that? Look at Diane. Look at Diane. I think it was 1985. As a management assistant with the Department of Recreation and Parks, she's worked with the Community Development Department since 1986, and she began as an administrative assistant, from which she retired April 13, 2001, as a senior management analyst too. In the Workforce Development Division, where she holds the position of Deputy Director of Planning and Management Information Systems. During her career, Diane has contributed substantially to the development of various employment training initiatives, such as Welfare to Work and School to Career, which has made a substantial difference in the lives of thousands of most needy residents in the city of Los Angeles. She was reminding me this morning that she remembered some of the work we were doing together in terms of Unite LA. And those of you who aren't involved with Unite LA, but it's really a school to career program where we have a partnership ongoing to try and make sure that we're preparing our school-age students for the careers that they want in their futures. Diane is married to her husband, Pat, has two sons, Joshua and Gabriel, a daughter-in-law, Erin, and a grandson, Jonathan. The City of Los Angeles congratulates Diane Nave on her retirement after 15 years of city service and extends best wishes for her for a healthful and happy retirement and success in her future endeavors. You know, this morning I had the pleasure of talking to Ernie Debs, the ex-supervisor. He's 97 years old. And I want you to share with you, he retired from public office in 1972, and he says, every time he gets a retirement check, he laughs. So you don't have to cry all the time, you get to laugh now. Good. Before I say the therefore, I needed to call up Lillian Kawasaki because I was looking at these resolutions this morning. I kept on asking my staff these strange questions. There's several whereases talking about you were raised in La Crescenta, graduate of Crescenta Valley High School, but I was confused at the last whereas that says Diane Nave has finally learned to wear shoes all the time. Would you please explain that to me?
There's a long history about wearing her shoes, but I think for us, it's a symbol of all the things she's done and all the things she's done as a grown-up. But the long history there, I'm going to ask her husband, Pat Nave, who also serves as city attorney for the Harbor Department, to come forward and share that with us. Pat?
She isn't going to like this, but when she graduated from San Diego State, she was the outstanding senior in the School of Social Work. And Diana, has been a kind of simple person, and like many city employees, has only been concerned about getting the job done and doing it as well as she could. And so the dean said, please come to the ceremony. It means something to me. And would you please wear your shoes? And when I was in law school, we lived in Pico Union. Councilman Bradley at that time was our councilman, and we would walk sometimes to the theaters on Broadway, see 3 movies for 50 cents. And one night we were walking back home, and she says, I think I left my shoes in the theater. But the truth is that she quit doing that and started wearing her shoes when she started to have to wear reading glasses, and she could no longer see the slivers of glass and the thorns in her feet.
With that explanation. Now therefore be it resolved that by adoption of this resolution, the Council of the City of Los Angeles does hereby congratulate Diane Nave for her retirement after 15 years of city service and extends best wishes to her for a healthful and happy retirement and success in her future endeavors. Thank you, Diane. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can't believe that there's a resolution that says something about wearing shoes, but I guess that's something unique. But I want to thank the city family for having let me be a part of it for the last 15 years. It's been a tremendous experience for me, and the feeling that you're doing something that really makes a difference in the community has been very important. I want to thank the council for your leadership, and particularly Councilman Hernandez, and for all the times that you prodded and pushed to make sure that we're really making connections out there between all the activities of the city on behalf of the youth of the city. And I think it's been very significant, and the changes that I have seen continually to improve our services to youth have been great. And I want to thank the department and the leadership of the department, particularly Sue and Lillian, for having set the vision and allowing me to come to a job every day where some days I couldn't believe I was actually being paid to do what I was doing. And I want to thank the staff, because I think the Community Development Department has to be the finest place to work in the city, because the staff are truly committed. They really exemplify the best of being a public servant, and they're really truly committed to what we do and making a difference in the city. So it's been fantastic. Thank you. Thank you.
Now, she deserves a picture with the flag and all that stuff.
That's what we're going to do, Madam Chair.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. As we now have a quorum, we're going to turn this meeting into a formal meeting. And this is, therefore, the meeting of the Los Angeles City Council on Friday, April 27th, 2001. There are 15 council districts. The council meets Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday at allegedly 10 o'clock, or as soon thereafter as a quorum shows up. We are being viewed on Channel 35, where you can watch reruns tonight and again on Sunday, and we are also available by council phone. Please call the roll.
Mertson, Chick, Fuhrer, Hernandez, Holden, Miskowski, Pacheco, Padilla, Ridley Thomas, Florence, Wax, Walters, and Galanter. 11 members present and a quorum, Madam President.
Thank you. And now that we have such a thing, what's the first item?
Approval of the minutes.
Without objection, I know that. Without objection, just so everybody, the minutes are approved. Just so you know what we're doing here, we have several more presentations. I want to get the meeting formally open. I have a group of young people who've come here to make a presentation to us. I'm going to call them next, and then I'm going to go back through the list of council members who still have presentations to go. I had not forgotten. All right, that was the minutes. Now then.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
Without objection, they are also approved. And having taken care of that, members of the council, we're joined this morning by a group of second and third graders from the Wilton Place School in Mr. Holden's district. And rather than just say hello to them, which I hope you will all do, they have actually come to say something to us. So we're going to bring them up where you can see their signs and they can show them on television. That's a good idea. Drape them over the front like that. That's good.
Be quiet.
Now put the sign where we can still see your faces. You don't have to lift the sign up above your face. There you are. Okay, so who's going to say to us what those signs are all about? There you are. You know what? See if you can pull that microphone around the side so we can see her too.
All right.
Will it bend around the other way and you can stand next to the podium?
Here, we're going to, excuse us, excuse us, excuse.
Sergeant, could you maybe help this young lady get to where we can get her a microphone and we can all hear her and see her at the same time? Oh, that's a good idea. Come around the front.
Can you squeeze through there? There.
No fun making a speech if nobody can see you. There you go. That's it. Bingo. Go ahead.
Hello, hola. Our names are Juliana Sandoval and Adeep Chaudhary. We are 9 years old. I'm 9 years old and I am 8. We are from 3rd grade at Wilton Place School. We are here to talk about getting a crossing guard at Wilton Place School at Leeward Street. Some people get hurt. Some people almost get hit by cars. Like moms with strollers picking up their kids. And last year, we sent 900 letters to Nate Holden, and we still didn't get a crossing guard at Leeward Avenue. Well, now your turn.
We'll have to fix that, won't we?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming to see us and tell us about this.
That's it.
And you two did a very good job.
P.S. Other schools, some other schools, like rich schools, have 3 crossing guards. But other schools too have to be safe. We only have 1, so please give us a crossing guard. Also, also other schools need safety, like a wall or some, crossing guards. And Soda Street School, and we're going to Soda Street School today to help them get a wall at the freeway for the sound wall. Well, now your turn. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
For
you.
hearing. Goodbye. Bye.
Good job, guys. Mrs. Walters.
Wanted to say on behalf of the request of these young people, even though Wilton Place is not in my council district, nor was it in my school board district when I was on the school board, but I know Wilton Place very well. I know the neighborhood very well, and I know it went from a small school to an overcrowded school, a severely overcrowded school, and the students had to stay there during some massive reconstruction that went on there. It's located right on Wilton Place at 8th Street, and the 8th Street traffic and the Wilton Place traffic that goes by there, even though 8th and Wilton Place is signalized, the traffic moves at a very high rate. And I have passed there often at dismissal time and just held my breath as I watched the cars going past and not really paying attention to the many children that have to cross all of those intersections. And Leeward is the street just north of 8th Street, where a lot of parents come in order to pick up their children, because the new school building that's on the yard, it opens onto Leeward, or the children are dismissed that way. Children, you were wonderful, and I hope you get your crossing guard, and I do know the area, and at least I can do is cross my fingers for you. And you have a marvelous principal there who has been there a number of years, and she does a great job.
Thank you, Ms. Walters. All right, thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. You did a great job. We'll go and make sure you get a crossing guard. And now I have to ask you, as soon as we're done with this picture, I have some more people who are going to have presentations this morning, so I need that podium back. All right, the chair recognizes Mr. Pacheco for a presentation.
Madam President, colleagues, I was told that there are two groups you never follow. One is children, and the other are animals on shows. And unfortunately, you've put me right behind the best, children's. But we will try our best to also present a worthy event and a worthy individual. This morning, I'm here to remind you all and invite you all to Fiesta Broadway this weekend, Sunday, April 29th, from 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. It's an event that overlaps with Councilmember Walters. This weekend, it will take approximately 36 blocks of free activity and entertainment, food. It's one of the largest, if not the most recognized, Cinco de Mayo celebrations in the nation. I will share with you that Cinco de Mayo, to me, represents a people's desire to independently decide where their future lies, and that's why, from my viewpoint, Cinco de Mayo is not only a celebration for the Mexican community, but for all people who want to determine their own future, and that's why I believe it embraces all of the Latino communities, especially those from Central America who had such a difficult time in the 80s with foreign intervention. And so for me, this is a great celebration in the city of Los Angeles. I want to bring up our Grand Marshal for this event, someone who we all know, someone who is part of our Latino community, but not only that, part of the national community here in the United States. Let me bring up John Secada, who is our Grand Marshal. And I want to present him with this resolution on behalf of the city of Los Angeles, and I'm going to read from it, where it talks about he has set an example of success and perseverance as a positive role model to all our Latino youth. He was the 1996 national spokesperson for music education and the Keeping Music in the Schools campaign on behalf of the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences Foundation. As you know, the studies have shown that children who learn music and who participate in music do much better in math, science, and other areas of school. So as much as we want to focus on the basics, I think we need to start rethinking music as one of the basics because it has that overlap effect. He has welcomed the opportunity to perform at many fundraising concerts for AIDS, other related charities such as LifeBeat, AmFarm, as well as for the children of UNICEF. He has continued to participate in the March of Dimes fundraiser, Walk America, which supports pioneering research and innovative programs that save infants born prematurely or with birth defects. His experience and desire to help others has led Mr. Secada to create the John Secada Music Scholarship. So, therefore, be it resolved that by the adoption of this resolution, the Los Angeles City Council joins Councilmember Nick Pacheco, that would be me, in welcoming Grammy Award winner John Cicada to this great city for the 2001 Fiesta Broadway celebration. We extend our warmest wishes and hope that you'll visit us again. Thank you so much for being our Grand Marshal. John Cicada.
This is great. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, everyone. And I love coming to Los Angeles. It's one of my second homes. And as a Latino and as Cinco de Mayo approaches, I definitely agree with you that Cinco de Mayo, I think, and Fiesta Broadway and what's going to happen this next week to follow is a celebration for all of Latin America. I've taken it as my own holiday as well, because it represents who we are as a people, and for us to remember and to be aware of, and to recognize our culture in a great city like this is wonderful. And thank you all for having me. Thank you, Nick, for this wonderful thing that you gave me today, and I really appreciate it. And it's going to be a great time on Sunday, and I'll see you all out there. Thank you. Thanks.
Chair recognizes Mr. Fewer for a presentation.
Earl, Maureen, where are you? No, Earl and Maureen. Ms. Chick was fraternizing with my designees here, so. I see. Thank you, Madam President. It's very important for us this week to recognize that all crimes have victims. And it's especially important that we in the city of Los Angeles be vigilant about assuring that victims of crime get treated with respect, get appropriately compensated, and in general, find that the judicial system's intervention can help rebuild their lives. This week is Victims' Rights Week. Crime victims, as we know, are all too often overlooked by the court system and by the community at large. But the City of Los Angeles, through the City Attorney's Victims Assistance Program, does everything we can to assure that victims of crime get the help they need. Under the guidance of the Los Angeles City Attorney's Office, during the past year, the Victims' Rights Assistance Program has provided help to 5,340 victims of crime. And 1,741 of those victims had claims submitted to the State Victim Compensation Claims Department. The value of those claims, well over $7 million. I know that victims of crime who've had the opportunity to come in contact with the City Attorney's Victims Assistance Program have felt that their lives have been dramatically improved because of the intervention of the City of Los Angeles and the City Attorney's Office in particular. So I have the privilege this morning of being able to present to a team from the City Attorney's Office, from our Chief of the Criminal Division, Maureen Siegel, to Earl Thomas, who's the Assistant Chief of the Criminal Division, and Alex Vargas, who directs the Victim Services Unit in the City Attorney's Office, this resolution signed by all council members and the Mayor of Los Angeles, acknowledging your incredibly significant work that helps heal the wounds that crime creates and rebuild the lives of victims of crime. Congratulations for your hard work, and all of us are in your debt. Okay, Maureen Siegel. We had the photo opportunity, hold on. The preliminary photo opportunity for all of you. Okay, Maureen, you're up.
Thank you, Councilmember Fuhr, the rest of the council, and the mayor's office as well. But the first thing I'd like to do is acknowledge Alex and his incredible, fabulous staff of compassionate, hardworking victim assistance workers who every day put together an incredible amount of work on behalf of the victims of crime for the city of Los Angeles. Thank you all. Thank you. And Paula Ramos, if you could remain standing while everybody else sits down. Paula is actually in her 21st year of service in this area. She's one of the original victim assistance workers who began with the first year of the grant 21 years ago. Thank you so much, Paula. A special thanks to the council for so many years of supporting the grant, which allows us to do this incredible work. I know that $7.4 million a year seems like quite a lot, but let me assure you, it's not tax dollars. That money comes from crime penalties and fees and fines that are paid by the criminals that the Office of the City Attorney and other prosecutors throughout the state convict. So money well spent as far as we're concerned. And we pledge another 21 years with your help and assistance in keeping our grant funds going. Thank you so much, and thank you for the acknowledgement.
Thank you, Madam President.
Chair recognizes Mr. Ridley Thomas for a presentation.
Madam President and members of the council, I believe that as policymakers, we are at our best when we seize the opportunity to harness and arrange the constellation of resources available to us. You might say the brightest stars in our city, to assist us in crafting policies and laws that advance the common good and improves the quality of our lives. The work that the council did on the pet overpopulation ordinance and other animal-related issues over the past several years is but one case in point. I know that Los Angeles is a better place to live, work, and play, as well as pray, because of the countless number of people who offer their time and energy in promoting a positive environment and humane public policy for the animals that provide companionship to many of our constituents. Within the ranks of the humane community, there is an individual who, in my estimation, outshines many, many others. That person is the one and only, the incomparable Jenny Barrett, and I want to invite her forward at this time to receive this proclamation. Jenny, come forward. Give her a hand, will you? Please consider her service to the city as a commissioner for the Board of Animal Services from 1993 to 1999. Recall, if you will, that those were some of the toughest, most difficult years relative to service provision and policy making for the department. Anyone monitoring Commissioner Barrett's involvement at that time would have noted her gifted and agile mind, as well as her compassionate heart, and finally her skillful leadership. She demonstrated extraordinary persistence and determination at a time when many others would have thrown up their hands and walked away from the issues fully disheartened, discouraged, and even disgusted. The residents of all of our districts, I believe the entire city, have been fortunate to have the likes of Jenny Barrett around us to help us work through the difficult problems of the day as they relate to public safety, specifically animal control and services. Madam President and members of the council, I'm honored to present this resolution on your behalf to Commissioner Barrett for all her work in helping to make Los Angeles a better place in which to live. So then, Jenny, this is on behalf of all of our colleagues here on the City Council, and it is now therefore resolved that by the adoption of this resolution, that we all commend you for your generous service to the city and for your commitment to improving the quality of life for those in Los Angeles, both its residents, its pets, and the environment, generally speaking. We thank you, Jenny.
Okay, now, Mr. Fewer, you get to talk after a while, Ginny. I just want to say, as I call on you, that persistence and what was the other thing you said? Those are definitely hallmarks of Ginny Barrett. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to say first, Mr. Ridley Thomas has really made enormous strides in elevating on the City Council floor the significance of the animal services issues that pervade our city. And this is yet another example of highlighting that issue for all of us in Los Angeles. But he couldn't have come today to the City Council today with someone more deeply, passionately committed to those issues than Ginny Barrett. You know, I have to say, you know, for all the, and it's a very frustrating thing to be an Animal Services Commissioner because the resources for years were never directed there. The leadership for years at the staff level was very complicated over there. And through all of it, it's not, for Jenny, it's not just a volunteer commitment of time. It's a very personal thing to be pursuing real humanity as applied to animals throughout the city. And it's always been so, well before you were a commissioner, and certainly now. And I think that there are very few people more fitting of acknowledgement on the City Council floor regarding this issue, but almost any issue, than you, Jenny. You've been just fabulous for the city in so many ways, and will continue to be. And it's a privilege for all of us to stand here and acknowledge your leadership.
Hang on, Laura.
Well, it's hard to say anything after that. That was so beautifully said. And I wasn't going to be nearly so grandiose and eloquent. You know, I like you, I know you. But no, also I was going to build off a little bit of what my colleague Ruth Galanter said, because we need more strong, tough people, women involved in civic affairs and government as you have been, and your perseverance and I don't want to say feistiness is a demeaning term, actually, I think, in this case, but you're hanging in there tough and telling the truth and fighting about things that need to be fought about. I miss having you here. And everything that my colleagues have said, I second the motion. Hal just mumbled something about you're sweet. You're tough and you're sweet, too.
Hey.
Okay, now it's your turn. Go ahead. All yours, Ginny. Go for it.
Okay, thank you. First, I have to thank Mark immensely, and both for this high honor and all of you for this high honor, but for his participation in a subterfuge, because I had no idea that this was happening, and my husband got me down here on false pretenses. So this is not only an honor, it's a surprise honor, and I am really, really very thrilled. But you have expressed that there has been a transition in the department and in the city's relationship with its animals over the last few years, and it's been my pleasure, frustrating at times, but my pleasure to be a part of that. It's been incredibly educational. I mean, the fact is animals are a part of all of our human lives, and as we make our society more and more isolated, more complicated, animals become a more important part of the connected fabric of people's lives, and we haven't really evolved our cities to account for that. And I'm taking a break right now, but certainly I'm still interested in all these subjects. I'm working on other animal issues and am always going to be involved in these issues, and have loved working with all of you and look forward to working with you again in the future. So thank you. Okay.
All right, we have one more. Speaking of tough, persistent women in politics, Ms. Chick, could I invite you up here for a minute? Up here, yes. Have I scared you already, Hal?
No, I thought I was just sitting down.
No. I have for you we all have taken note of the fact that with Laura's recent election as the city controller, when I left the Kleenex out there, you can't cry.
Okay. I won't, I'm a tough woman.
No, that's right. Don't you forget it. You won't forget it. As you know, with Ms. Chick's recent election to the office of city controller, which she will assume in July, she becomes the first female citywide office holder in the history of the city of Los Angeles, and we are all very proud of you. So this is for you. And we wanted you to know we noticed.
That's very, very, very nice, everybody. Thank you very much. It's very special to have a surprise treat like this from people that I know and have grown to love and very much respect, and have very sad and ambivalent feelings about not working with you in the same capacity as always. But I'm looking forward to the new one. And forget the tears in my eyes, because I am one tough woman, and I'm going to be one tough controller. Thank you very much, Ruth.
We know you are, or we wouldn't be proud of you. Congratulations. This, by the way, is for you. Oh. All right. Okay. Excuse me. One thing about tough women is we're all on diets. Always. All right. Mr. Hernandez, did you want to say something? I'm sorry. All right. All right. I believe we are actually ready to go through the agenda here and get on with our formal business. So, what have we got?
Before starting the regular agenda, there's a few items to be continued. Item number 5, a request from Council District 10 that this matter be continued until May 2nd.
Is there any objection? It is now continued.
Items number 12 and 13, also request by Council District 10 to have this matter continued to May 2nd.
All right. Without objection, those will be continued as well. We don't have cards on any of those.
Item number 17, a request from Council District 15 to continue that matter till May 1st.
All right. That's Tuesday, right?
Yes.
Item 17 is continued.
That brings you to item number 1 on the regular agenda, which is an item notice for public hearing.
All right. I do not have any cards from members of the public. Is there anybody who wants to address us on item 1? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Members of the council, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
That is approved.
Item number 2 on the agenda is an item for which public hearing has been held.
Yes, on behalf of my colleague, Mr. Fuhr, I'd like to ask for a, 3-week continuance?
All right, let's continue item 2 for 3 weeks.
That's May 18th.
May 18th. Without objection, takes care of item 2.
Items number 3 through 11 and 14 through 17, except for number 5, which has been acted on, are items for which public hearings have not been held.
All right, is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address any of those items? I'm getting to that. Hold on. Seeing none, I see none, right? The public hearings are closed. Now, any specials? Mr. Bernson calls item 6 special. Any others? Members of the council, any specials 3 through 16? No.
16
All right.
for the purpose of voting no.
All right. And you also wanted to call 16 special?
13.
13. All right, Mr. 13 we continued.
Oh, okay, we did continue. Okay.
16, Ms. Walters calls special. Okay. Anybody else? Yeah, that's okay, but it's a separate vote. Mr. Pacheco? No? Okay, so we have items 3, 4, 7 through 11, and 14 and 15. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Those are approved.
The ordinance will be held over on item number 3 until May 4th for a second reading.
Right. The reason for that, in case anybody is interested, is that we don't have 12 members present. We are still at 11, are we not?
That's correct.
Yes. Okay.
Madam,
Mr. Ridley Thomas?
what about on 14, did we move B? That was the intent.
Well, actually, I'm not sure that we specified. On 14...
Should be B.
There isn't a B. There's a 1, 2, and 3.
14 is A.
Communication
B.
from Chair Public Safety Committee.
There was a communication from the chair of personnel submitted yesterday.
It augments that, so we need to, it's inclusive of A, so it needs to be B.
That is Chair.
All right, let's just, so we do
Sorry.
this straight, we'll reconsider item 14. That is now, unless there's an objection, it is now reconsidered, and we will vote again on 14 as a,
As amended.
14B
Yeah.
as amended to include personnel. Open the
Personnel
roll,
report.
close the roll, tabulate the vote.
Thank you,
11 ayes.
Thank you, Madam President.
Okay, that's taken care of, that's approved. Now, that brings
Brings you
us,
to item number 19 on the continuation agenda. There is an amending motion that has been circulated by Mr. Hernandez.
all right, we also have cards on both 19 and 20, so let's call those special on 19, okay. All right, all right, there's been a public hearing on 19. Now, Ms. Weingart's on the phone. Are we certain this time that whatever happened, there really was a hearing and it really counts? On item 19, is everybody comfortable that we really did have? Because I do have people who want to be heard. All right.
It is a report that was in
It's a
committee.
report
More than one
from the
member, there was
committee
a
from
quorum.
more than one member, and they had a hearing, right? Okay. So unless I have a motion to hold another hearing on 19, the matter is before us, and that's the one that has the amendment?
Right,
Where's
has the
the
amendment.
amendment? Has the amendment been circulated? I believe so, yes. I saw it earlier. Okay, members of the council, anybody have anything to say? Somebody want to move the amendment?
I move the amendment.
Okay,
Madam
thank
Chair.
you. Mr. Hernandez has moved the amended, moved the amendment. Okay, is there any objection to the amendment? Seeing none, the item is amended, and item 19 as amended is now before us. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Which brings us to,
Items number 20 through 22 on the continuation agenda.
Madam President,
Mr.
I'd like
Pacheco.
to move item number 20 for continuation till Tuesday.
Okay,
Continue until Tuesday.
item 20 until Tuesday?
That would be May
Hey,
1st.
Mr. Pacheco has asked that item 20 be continued until Tuesday's meeting. That's our next meeting. Good point. How many people will be here? I think we have a reasonably full house.
You should have 12 members on Tuesday.
Okay? Well, if they all show, we'll have 12 members on Tuesday.
Point of information, Madam Chair.
Yes, Ms. Walters.
This is the new ethics requirement that would require third parties to report their
That's
amount of money.
correct.
If we put it off to Tuesday, how much further does that put it off? It was supposed to go into effect right away that would allow for some immediate reporting of those types of expenditures in the current general election.
Well, it will put it off the difference of Friday to Tuesday. The one provision in the ordinance is a retroactive report for what happened before April 11th. And the ordinance proposes to require that report of everything that happened before April 11th be made within 72 hours of whenever the council
Madam
adopts
Chair,
it. We need to decide, yes, Mr. Hernandez wants to be heard, Mr.
Yeah,
Bergson wants
I
to
would
be heard.
like to debate the issue today.
Well, we can debate the issue today, and actually, you can still move to continue it till Tuesday if you want to. but-
Point of order, if I
Yes.
may, maybe I can solve the
Well,
problem.
since we have now 3 people who
We
want to
don't
do
have
it,
12
hearing
people
it.
here today.
That's
But if we
correct.
put it over until Tuesday, we may not have 12 people then. What I would suggest is that if we withhold, somebody withholds, I could withhold on it, then it will come up next week on Friday, and we'll be able to vote on it without having 12 people here.
So we would still have to have the debate today.
We can have the debate, but I'm going to withhold so that we don't get delayed for any long period of time.
Okay, well, now that we've understood that, wait, now everybody wants to be heard, so, yes, sir.
I withdraw my motion.
Point of order, Hal, is that if
That's
you,
probably a good idea.
Hal, the point is, though, that even on second reading, if you don't have 12 votes, it's a 30-day period.
No, actually, Joel, we checked this out in committee. On this particular one, it's written, we'll have the staff explain that to you. This one is new in our experience. This one, once it is adopted, if it's adopted the first reading by 12 votes, it will go into effect immediately upon publication. If it is adopted by less than 12 votes, it does go to a second reading, but there is no 30-day waiting period in it. We actually discussed
That
this
would
in
be
committee
terrific
yesterday.
if that was the case.
So since I now have a lot of people who want to be heard, Mr. Pacheco has withdrawn his motion without prejudice, in case he chooses to bring it back. And do you want to have a staff report first? Let me just tell you, we held a Rules and Elections Committee meeting yesterday. Ms. Chick and I were both present. We had a reasonably extensive discussion. We sent the matter forward because we had a whole series of questions that we felt needed to be answered before we made a recommendation, and that is why there is no recommendation before you. We have the Ethics Commission people here. We have Mr. Echeverria from the City Attorney's Office. We have, we can certainly have a discussion. What I want to know, since I now have 4 of you who want to be heard, is do you want to hear from the staff first? Which seemed wise, wouldn't it? So we are now on item 20. I don't know how we got to this ahead of the other ones that would have been called special, but we're here, so let's do it. And we will do this in the order unless I hear strenuous objection. We'll hear first from the Ethics Commission and the City Attorney. We'll then hear from Mr. Stern, who is the only person who has asked to be heard. And then we'll close the public hearing and hear from all the council members till we get somewhere. Okay, go ahead.
Great. Good morning, council members. Thank you. I'm Leanne Pelham, the Executive Director of the Ethics Commission. The 2 ordinances before you today, as Councilmember Galanter indicated, we had a discussion yesterday at Rules and Elections about. These are 2 ordinances that would affect, one, the runoff election and provide additional public disclosure for the runoff election that we're moving into. A second ordinance, which we call the shorter ordinance, would provide some disclosure for the April election that took place recently. Both ordinances would affect, in our view, the ability of voters to have important information before the runoff election about the sources and amounts of independent third-party spending in city campaigns. These reporting requirements are something that we're proposing because, as you know, under Prop 34, the disclosure requirements were undermined as a result of removing from disclosure requirements any payments for membership communications that an organization sends or distributes to its members to support or oppose a candidate for city office. These ordinances, importantly, that are before you would not, with one minor technical exception, would not affect the way candidates are currently running their campaigns. So this would not be a midstream change of any kind for city candidates. These ordinances would not in any way redefine terms of either the state Political Reform Act or our ethics ordinances. What the ordinances would do is to provide disclosure where disclosure was recently exempted as a result of changes in state law. The ordinances would require, as a result of the ordinances before you, payments that organizations make to communicate with their members to support or oppose city candidates would be required to be reported to the Ethics Commission within 24 hours and would help trigger the lifting of the spending limits for candidates who have agreed to participate in our matching funds program. As you know, one of the key components of our comprehensive campaign system in the city enables candidates who have agreed to abide by spending limits to spend beyond those limits if there is a large amount of independent spending in their race. Because of the change in Prop 34 in January, that provision of our law has been undermined. We believe it's important to ensure that candidates who agreed to abide by certain rules at the outset of their campaign can continue to play by those rules. And so we're recommending through these ordinances that the disclosure of those payments would trigger the lifting of the spending limits if they raise to a significant level in candidates' campaigns. Secondly, the ordinances before you would impose a notification requirement for organizations who, again, spend more than $1,000 to communicate with their members to support or oppose city candidates in the June runoff. That would be required to be notified. That notification would be required to be sent to the Ethics Commission no later than a week before the date of the runoff election. It would disclose the source and the amount of contributions the organizations have received, and it would also disclose any independent spending that those organizations made to communicate with their members to support or oppose city candidates in the city of Los Angeles. Importantly, again, these limits would apply to the lifting of the spending limits, and we also have a provision that perhaps our president can speak to, but is also aimed at providing greater accountability for the types of messages that are being sent to voters to influence their vote through radio, television ads. It basically would expand our role as a repository for information so that the voters could come into our office and see in one place and one time what kinds of messages are being sent to voters. So this addresses the anonymous recorded telephone calls that became an issue in the primary election. Again, these ordinances would take effect as they're drafted because they are ordinances that otherwise relate to an election under City Charter Section 252A. They would take effect upon their publication. They would be effective only for these elections, the April and the runoff election. Yesterday, Councilmember Chick in committee raised the question of whether, in fact, there should, if the council agrees that these proposals have merit, whether the council should direct the city to, in fact, draft a supplemental ordinance that would take effect on publication, or after 30 days after publication, but would take effect for all elections after the June runoff. So that's another thought that Councilmember Chick had yesterday, which we would be supportive of. But these are drafted because we're concerned that there was an identified problem. The role of the Ethics Commission, of course, is to address these issues when we see them. It's not about a particular race or a particular campaign, but it's about restoring the effectiveness of our system when we can do so, and we believe we have the opportunity to do that now, so we would encourage your support of these ordinances.
Next.
Good morning, members of the council. I should note that we have the pleasure of speaking after both the children and representatives of the animal groups, so I'm not sure what we're to take from that. My name is Miriam Krinsky. I'm president of the Ethics Commission, and I'm speaking to you today on behalf of our commission. And I'd like to supplement some of the comments that were made by Leanne. As Leanne indicated, we're before you today to ask your support for two ordinances that seek to address some discrete problems that were identified over the course of the past election and seek to address them with discrete solutions. What we're aiming to do is to return to some of the principles that have been the bedrock of this city's conduct of its elections. Open elections that are premised on accountability and that are premised on disclosure, whereby the voters go to the polls armed with the information that they have a right to know before they cast their votes. We're asking your action today so that we can make some changes that will have a true impact on the coming election. Having identified the problems over the course of the past few months, we believe that it would be irresponsible to allow these problems to continue without acting in discrete ways that can solve those problems. These are not new concepts or new principles. The notion of disclosure, the notion of open and accountable elections, the notion of a successful matching funds program that should be allowed to operate without obstruction are principles that we've brought to bear throughout elections over the past number of years, and we're seeking to simply see the preservation of those principles. What I'd like to do is to address a couple of the questions that have come up over the course of the past week or so as we've considered these issues and these problems. The question has been raised as to why the ordinances, as drafted, pertain only to this election. And the answer is plain and simple. We wanted action to result quickly such that these ordinances could take effect without the 30-day lag time that would otherwise come into play. By having the ordinances address simply this election, the city charter allows them to come into effect without the 30-day lag time. That's no indication that we believe that these changes should not be changes for the future and for every election forward. And I think as Leanne has indicated, the suggestion was made yesterday that there be some directive in combination with these ordinances, that an ordinance be drafted along these lines for future elections. And that's something that certainly we would enthusiastically support. The only reason we didn't do so is because we look at these as simply the beginning of our efforts in the area of independent expenditures. After this election, I fully expect that we'll take a broad-based look at many of the issues that have come up in regard to independent expenditures. Councilman Wax and others have made suggestions in regard to independent expenditures, and we plan to hold a hearing and to have some creative thinking done in that area and come back to you over time with a whole package of proposals and reforms. The question has also been raised as to why we should rush forward and act now when an election cycle is already underway. And I think it's probably the first time that the Commission has been accused or criticized for acting in too quick a fashion. Quite often, it's to the contrary. As we deliberately and thoughtfully proceed ahead, there are those who would rather us act more quickly. Nothing we have done here is in any way rash or a rush to judgment, or any type of entering into a political fray. What we are doing and what we're asking your support for is the fundamental notion and support of the fundamental notion of disclosure. That's nothing new. The problems that were identified and the solutions that we've crafted are not rocket science. These are not difficult areas, and we're seeking to address them in straightforward, simple ways. We held 5 hours of hearings that spanned 2 days, and no one publicly came forward and indicated any opposition to these proposals. We invited all the interested parties to discuss with us, to have a dialogue with us in regard to these proposals. We invited all of the candidates, and no one came forward to oppose these proposals. So we believe that that unanimity and the simplicity of these problems and the solutions that we've crafted indicates that it is important for us to move forward quickly. There was also some concern raised in regard, and I think it was referenced earlier as well, in regard to the retroactive nature of some of the provisions that we've crafted. And I think it's important to realize that, again, the changes that we seek to bring about are not of earth-shattering magnitude. Many of the groups who we're asking to report and to retroactively report will otherwise have to do so on July 1st anyway. We're simply seeking to have that information captured and reported to the public in a meaningful time before it's too little too late. So for all of these reasons, we hope that you'll join us in trying to promote our system of open and accountable elections and try to fix some of the problems we saw, both with the unreported expenditures and with the anonymous phone calling that we saw in the waning days of the election.
Pete, you want to add anything? You might want to address the 30-day issue that Joel was concerned about. Okay, you're comfortable with that? Okay, don't bother to repeat it then. Let's see if we
concur in that analysis. The only point that has not been mentioned is that there's been some question raised as to whether the city is preempted from acting in this area by state law and provisions of the government code. And our view is that the state Supreme Court has answered that question in the prior case, Johnson versus Bradley, where it concluded that this city's public campaign finance law is a matter of municipal concern and therefore is not preempted by state law. We believe that this provision being added to it would not change that conclusion by the courts, and that's our view.
Okay, we'll now have the public hearing. We did have a public hearing in committee, but of course most of you weren't there, and we're going to hear from the same speaker again. So we'll hear from Mr. Robert Stern.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam President, members of the Council. I am Bob Stern, President of the Center for Governmental Studies. It's been several years since I've appeared before you, so I thought I'd just let you know who I am. I'm the past first General Counsel of the Fair Political Practices Commission for 9 years. I helped draft the Political Reform Act of 1974, the state disclosure law that you're all under. And 11 years ago, I assisted the city attorney and your council in drafting the campaign finance law for Los Angeles. The Center for Governmental Studies is a nonprofit, nonpartisan research organization that studies campaign financing throughout Los Angeles and throughout the country. We're now engaged in a study of Los Angeles and other cities that have comprehensive campaign finance laws. I'm not here, and I don't think the ordinance is here because of a loophole in the city law that we helped draft. We're here because of a loophole created by Proposition 34, the state measure passed by the voters last year, put on the ballot by the legislature. They had less hearings on Proposition 34 than you've had even today, as well as the Ethics Commission has held. As Mira Makrinsky said, there's been 6 hours of public testimony received on this. The legislature had no hours, no minutes of public testimony on Prop 34.
Mr. Stern, could I safely assume that the bottom line is you think we should pass these?
Yes, I think that's a good bottom line.
Could I ask you to sort of get there?
Sure. Millions of dollars may have been spent on this election so far, but we don't know. And many more money will maybe spent in this year's in June election. The simple question before you today is, do we get disclosure before the June election, or do we get disclosure after the June election, or perhaps no disclosure at all? And that's what disclosure is all about. The voters should know before they vote who is contributing and who is spending money on behalf of city candidates. You're not changing the rules in the middle of the game. You're restoring the rules to what they were before the legislature interfered with this city's election. I also have a statement by California Common Cause. I will not read the statement. I'll have it distributed. Basically, California Common Cause urges the council to adopt the recommendations that are before you today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That closes the public hearing. Mr. Hernandez.
Members of the council, it's no secret that I have endorsed a candidate for mayor, and it is not our city attorney. Now, I started that way because I wanted full disclosure. And part of what's bothersome to me is no matter how you look at it, whether it be Professor Stern, Common Cause, our Ethics Commission, now they're tainted. They're tainted because they're trying to change the rules that existed prior to this primary. And see, there was a field of candidates that ran for office. And no matter what we say, it wasn't an even playing field. Some candidates started raising money beforehand. Other candidates held elected office that put them in a position where they could influence decisions, like our city attorney. No matter how you look at it, that is a reality. And I think that there's a taint that's being created here because we're not allowing the process to continue under the rules that existed. And the sad part about it is maybe there should be a ban that says the city attorney can't run for mayor. But the reality is he can. And he does influence how ordinances are drafted and how interpretations happen, and the fact that he has a lot of city attorneys who support him because he's been their boss for years. And he's the one that expressed the primary concern in the media about this issue. I'm trying to explain it because the media has also been dealing with the issue of disclosure. And that's been a matter of public debate, and that's how many of us found out about the issue. The sadness to me is I support full disclosure. And there'd be no question in my mind that I'd be an aye vote if this was to go effect July 1st. And I would make sure that that was the understanding for the future rules. But the arguments I had heard today did not sway me. And maybe the reason they didn't sway me is because I'm tainted myself in the middle of an election. An election that is very important to my community. You see, I feel I was very much in tune with my constituents in my position. And I think that the reality is changing the rules is not taking into account their position. A lot of them found out because of the efforts of the Democratic Party. I mean, I'm not going to, again, that's public information. I just think that the fact that now the Ethics Commission is involved in the issue in the middle of the game. I mean, I've never been to a football game where the rules changed in the middle of the game. I've never been to a baseball game where the rules changed in the middle of the game. I've never been to a public debate where the rules changed in the middle of the game. And whenever that happens, you taint the process. And that's what's happening today. And so my objections to what's happening today is simply that the process already began. And no matter how you look at it, any changes basically are tainting the game. And I don't think that's what the Ethics Commission is about. I don't think that's what Common Cause has been about, and I don't think that's what campaign reform has been about. And that's why I'm objecting to what's before us today.
Thank you. Mr. Burnson.
Yes, members of the council, regardless of who you support in a race or whether you've endorsed anybody, the real purpose of the Ethics Commission and the process that we adopted years ago was a little different perhaps than some of the practices they've had, which some of us haven't agreed with, but they're really on the right course here. I mean, what you need in a campaign is for people to know all the facts. They need to know where the support is coming from. It's probably more important than campaign contribution limitations, because if there's disclosure, you at least know where the support is coming from. But in all due respect, I think that this is the right move, because I think that people deserve to know where money is coming from. There should not be the ability for groups, for independent expenditure committees, to make contributions where the money is, you don't know where the money is coming from. I know I've been the victim in one election of an independent expenditure committee. I knew where the money was coming from. We couldn't pin it down, but we knew it was from BFI because of the dump. But the point is that, in all due respect, and I know we're in the middle of an election, but because we haven't done something that we should have done before doesn't mean we shouldn't do it now. And I am going to support this.
Ms. Mizikowski.
Thank you, Madam President. I concur with what Mr. Burnson has said, and I don't feel that these are necessarily rules being changed in the middle of the game. I think these are rules, or our rules, as we had understood them, being brought back to how we had understood them. And granted, a state law changed and upset that, and we only discovered it as we were in the middle of the game. But I think this is a restoring our ordinance to the way we had thought and intended it would run, and covered all of those expenditures that would be made, independent expenditures or otherwise. Members of the council, I liken the independent expenditures that we've seen in this cycle of elections to that has haunted our federal government, and that is what we call the soft money. There are limitations in our ordinance. There have been limitations. There have been well-codified procedures, and all of a sudden that is being upset, and upset in a way I think that is upsetting the public. The concern, wherever it came from, about what was happening and the inability to find out how it was happening and where it was happening and where it was coming from was a concern, and should be a concern to every voter in this city. I think this, I applaud the Ethics Commission, who I think is as untainted an agency that we have in the city. And it's untainted in part because of the wisdom of how it was crafted, how it was put together. It isn't put together like many of our other commissions, appointed solely by the mayor and confirmed by the council. It is, the people who are put on the Ethics Commission come from a variety of places and people, and so it really has as good as I think we can craft an independent group. I appreciate what they have done. I am supportive of it. The only question I have, and Mr. Echeverria, this is really for you. Today we received a letter from a law firm in Sacramento, and it, as trying to read it quickly, it seems to make a distinction between our disclosure requirement and those of members' organization, and I assume that would be something like one of the political parties, which specifically was precluded in the state law from having to have the individual contributions disclosed. Have you seen that letter, and would you be able to make a distinction? Do we need to be concerned about our distinction, or are you feeling that previous court cases allow the city, and in some ways I believe that this ordinance that we're proposing is essentially a clarification to get back to how we had always understood our law to operate, our law to be basically putting forward disclosure, and I think disclosure with limits were always the essence of our law from 10, 12 years ago, and they've worked well for that period of time, and this is trying to get back to that. So can you, the question specifically is, have you seen this letter, and do you see any problem with the distinction on what our ordinance is preparing and to do and this proposal?
We have not, I'm sorry, I have not seen the letter. We are, however, familiar with the issue. Mr. Alperin, who is out of town today or would have been here, has thoroughly reviewed the issue, and we believe that we are in keeping with the law as it applies to the city of LA. That and in fact, one of the exemptions that is built into the ordinance is a provision that exempts the regularly published newsletters of organizations to their members. That we believe that. is an
Oh, it's okay,
exception
so
that
it's
would
just
be excluded.
newsletters, it's not necessarily other campaign countries. Okay, I
Correct.
appreciate that. I will give you this letter while the discussion continues, so that you might look at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. The chair recognizes Councilman Wax.
First, Mr. Echeverria, could you answer me a question? Does this simply require disclosure of the fact that an entity makes an independent expenditure and the amount of it, or does it require disclosure of the source of that expenditure, as to i.e., who made the contribution to the entity?
Both, the contributions and the expenditures above $1,000.
So that if Organization X spent $500,000 on candidate Y, and Organization X got its money, $250,000 each from two different people, they would not only have to disclose that they spent $500,000 on the candidate, but that they got their money from two sources of $250,000.
Correct.
Okay, I wanted to make sure that we did that. Let me say, members of council, I really applaud the Ethics Commission coming forward in trying to do something at this late game. At best, this is a Band-Aid on a hemorrhage to begin with, at best, but it's all I think they feel that they can do at this point. We have two tough laws, Mr. Hernandez, and we have lived by those because the voters enacted them. They limit the amount of money any individual or business can contribute to a campaign, and they require full disclosure of the source of those contributions. The problem that supposedly came from Prop 34 was not only that there wasn't disclosure of who was making the expenditures or where the source was, but the problem that is not addressed here is the fact that even with disclosure, they can be in an unlimited amount. Someone can give an entity $1 million, and that entity, under this ordinance here, as long as they disclose it, could spend it on behalf of a candidate. So you have two sets of rules going along the way. You have the people obeying by the city laws who are limiting their contributions to $1,000 each, or $500 if they're running for the council. And then you have the independent expenditures, to which people who could only give $1,000 to the candidate could give $1 million or $2 million. So even with disclosure, which I believe is a very healthy thing and a necessary thing, you still have the incredible disadvantage of the candidate who isn't doing this, still living by the $1,000 contribution limits, calling up 1 million people to get 1,000 people to get $1 million, and you've got a case here where another candidate could literally get $1 million from someone through a circuitous way. This isn't, in fact, stopping that practice, and I would say that practice is a far more onerous one than the lack of disclosure, though I support the disclosure. Now, I do want to ask one thing, though. If you're simply saying that, Mr. Echeverria and I was concerned that we're not preempted and ethics really has the right to do this, then why, Ms. Pelham, if we're not preempted, then why didn't you, during the last election, simply enforce the city laws we have that limit the amount of contributions from any source and require full disclosure, and make somebody else sue you rather than letting them get away with it?
Councilmember Wax, as you know, we do everything we can to enforce the laws under our jurisdiction. One of the reasons that we haven't brought this issue or didn't bring this issue before January 1st is obviously this law took effect January 1st. In previous elections and in 1999...
During January 1st till April.
Yes, but again, we anticipated that there would be large amounts of independent spending unreported, but we didn't know, because in 1999, for example, we did see a lot of reporting by a number of parties that people who aren't reporting now.
To enjoin it? What I'm simply saying is, let me just say this very bluntly. The independent expenditure made a mockery of all of our campaign laws. They undercut every effort that the people of Los Angeles had to try to limit expenditures, limit contributions, and require full disclosure. They completely undercut it. I think that you had a duty to do everything you possibly could, including going to court for an injunction, to stop that from happening. I'm glad you're acting now, but I think you should have done that then. And Mr. Hernandez, let me tell you two things. You talk about the rules changing in the middle of the game. Prop 34 came in the middle of the game, too. And secondly, you do not do your candidate, nobody does their candidates, any service. In fact, you do them a great disservice if it makes them look like they may be opposing full disclosure of the law.
Thank you, Mr. Wax. The chair recognizes Council President Galanter.
Thank you. I have been through this with the staff before, but there are several comments I want to make. I too believe in full disclosure. And I also think, as I want to say in public again, I think the Ethics Commission does a fabulous job with a law that is inherently a failure. And it's not because it was written badly, it's not that kind of a failure, it's not because anybody's intent was wrong. But I think we need to face the fact that money is essential to a candidate in order to get a message out. And many people, we wish there were more people, but many people feel that they want to make sure certain messages do get out or certain other messages get counteracted. And so money is always going to be flowing in the political process. And the reason I think that the Ethics Commission is inherently handicapped through no fault of their own is that every time we come up with a new law, somebody's going to figure out some other way to accomplish what they wanted to accomplish in the first place, which was to be able to get a message out in one form or another. And then we are all left trying to catch up and deal with that message, with that particular mechanism. Somebody comes up with another mechanism. And I would refer you to the health planning legislation of the 1970s, which in order to understand it, you had to know every abuse that had happened over the last 20 years, because each section of the law was a response to something specific that had gone wrong. And the result was it was too complicated for anybody to live by. I really think you guys do great work. I don't envy you at all. I wouldn't have your job for anything. But I think that what we're stuck with today is a situation that is even more complicated. And as I mentioned to both Ms. Krinsky and Ms. Pelham yesterday, nobody speaks the language as competently as they do. But what we're talking about here is not what is called an independent expenditure campaign. There's yet another wrinkle to our law. There's the candidate committees and campaigns, there's the independent expenditures, for which we have lots of regulations, and there is what this deals with, which is organizations that are membership organizations. It's not the newly created Committee for Good Government, which supports or opposes a candidate. It's any organization that enlists members and then communicates with its members. And the goal here, the goal of this ordinance, is to let the public know that Organization X, in communicating with its members in support or opposition of a particular person, spent this much money. And the ordinance then says they have to, I believe it says they have to tell you also where they got the money that they spent. Now, the problem I have about the changing the rules issue is not that the rules are suddenly more onerous in some way, but the fact is, and all of us having run for office know, that when you're in a campaign, even if you're not the candidate, if you're in an organization in a campaign, the pressure is very intense. And we've all found at one time or another that we made mistakes in our record keeping that we had to fix later. That's why they audit us, and that's why we go back and return excess contributions if we can find them. And we try to straighten out mistakes that get made out of pure rush or inadvertence. What we're looking at here is a rule that will affect not only political parties and not only labor unions, but any organization that spends $1,000 or more communicating with its own members, unless it's in their regular newsletter, which just happens to be timed to hit right before the election. One of the provisions in one of these ordinances, I'm sorry, I left them all upstairs, but one of the provisions requires that within 72 hours of the effective date of this ordinance, an organization that communicated with its members during the primary and is now presumably embroiled in communicating with its members in the runoff election, must go back and also provide full records on where they got the money, what they spent it on, who the vendors were, all that stuff within 3 days for all the stuff that happened up to April 11th. Now, I have reasonable confidence that the big organizations that are involved in communicating with their members can do this. But there are small ones. I worked a long time ago for an organization called the League of Conservation Voters. Now, the State League of Conservation Voters probably has good record keeping and can do it. But the LA League of Conservation Voters is a small group. I helped start it. It is not a group with a high-powered record-keeping operation unless it's changed very dramatically since my day. And a group like that is going to find itself, I can't speak for them, I'm not speaking, but it's going to find itself out of compliance in 3 days. Or they're going to pull their people off doing whatever communicating with their members they're doing now in order to go back and comply with the requirements before April. And I don't think that's fair. I understand the urgency, I understand the need for the urgency, but this is not going to find us the people who made the phone calls claiming to be Gloria Molina, because that happened before April 11th. We don't know who did it. We don't know who to require to disclose. Had this been in place and had they complied with it, we would know the answer to that. But had it been in place and they not complied with it, we still wouldn't know the answer because we wouldn't know who did it. So the concern I have here is that I think it's headed in the right direction, but I think that this is not going to get us what we really need with enough time for anybody to plan to give you the full information that we need. And so I just have my usual set of hesitations about doing this. I know it's very unfashionable to say anything negative about campaign reform. It's the hottest issue in the country. The voters all love it. But I think it doesn't work.
Thank you, Madam President. The chair recognizes Councilman Pacheco.
Mr. President, colleagues, I am not going to speak strongly for or against this measure, only because I just want to take the opportunity to talk about generally the issues before us. I have shared with the executive director from Leanne from Ethics that philosophically my viewpoint is I believe that what voters really want to know is who's giving the contribution. And I really think voters are less concerned with the dollar amount because I think they're more focused on being able to associate people with their candidates. I think we do actually a disservice to that process of finding out where the money's coming from when we have such low contribution limits. As I've shared with her and I've shared with you as colleagues, is that it's very difficult to follow the money when you talk about a huge donor, because a huge donor who would normally want to give a $15,000, $20,000 contribution to their favorite candidate, under our rules cannot. But under our rules, what they can do is send a letter to all their friends or talk to all their friends and collect the same $15,000 or $20,000 for their favorite candidate, and we won't know. We can't piece that together because we don't have a way of controlling that or have a mechanism to really show that to the voters. So I personally think it's a disservice when we have these low contribution limits because people can't then say that this big donor is associating themselves with an individual. So I just wanted to bring that to our attention, and the fact that we're coming up to close to 10 years of reviewing. I personally think that every 10 years we should review these major packages that go before the voters. We're getting close to that. I think it's also a good idea to look at this whole issue. I think we also know that a lot of these races, a lot of these competitions, whether it be council, mayor, or any other position in the city of Los Angeles, have really become sort of a feeding frenzy because of term limits and how short the term limits are for everyone. I don't believe you can separate the cause and effect that we have with the musical chairs that goes on statewide, locally, and I think that also brings a lot of interest, financial interest from the parties to get their persons landed somewhere or place them somewhere. So I think we have to look at this whole package. So I look forward to the next couple of years reviewing all these things. I'm going to support the current matter because I think it's in the right direction of disclosure. But I just thought I'd give you this use this as an opportunity to discuss other issues that we should look at as a city.
Thank you, Councilman. The chair recognizes Councilwoman Chick.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to use the opportunity to also look to the future in terms of other things that have become clear to us need addressing. Before I raise one or two of those items, though, I wanted to go back to the issue of if this is to go forward, and it is felt to be so important for this election, then, colleagues, it seems to me that it absolutely makes sense that we would also be saying we want an ordinance to go into place for future elections. And so I would ask why that couldn't happen even as of Tuesday, since the ordinance language, et cetera, would be exactly the same, except to take out the dates. And I would feel much more comfortable voting on something that only applies to one election and a separate ordinance for all future elections. I would feel better on that. And before I give you a chance to answer, I have raised, as you know, and in committee, 2 other items. One, in terms of slate mailers, since this is coming under, for me, the umbrella of disclosure. And as other of my colleagues have said, that sharing information is good, is positive. That if an entity or a person is making a donation, is helping a campaign, they should be proud and eager to share that information with anyone who might be interested in knowing it. And I am supportive of doing that in the proper way. So on slate mailers, I believe right now there'll be the name of an organization. In many cases, the organization only exists for the purpose of putting out the slate and does not list who is really paying for the slate, in many cases, candidate campaign funds. I've had that experience, and I've always been comfortable having voters know that some of my campaign funds were going towards that. But it doesn't happen now, and it needs to. And in addition, this last election also showed that independent expenditures can be used as a way to hold up qualifying another candidate for matching funds. And I think the commission needs to look at using the dollars spent on independent expenditures to include that in the $100,000 qualifying threshold that a candidate has to have raised in order to qualify an opponent for matching funds. I think Leanne knows what I'm talking about, and the general public might not. In terms of both ordinances, and colleagues, on this particular issue, if we got into analyzing exactly how and why this came to us in this exact particular way right now, we'd be talking about a whole lot of other things. For me, I think I have decided which side of this I'm on by looking at the substance of what is before us. And it makes sense to count independent expenditure dollars, which are as valuable as any others in helping to win a campaign, to count them in evening the playing field. And I agree with Mr. Wax, it doesn't really even it, but to allow other candidates to have the cap lifted. And I also think that the public should know who is financing campaigns. Some of the other things about how I feel about independent expenditure in general is not relevant to this discussion. So just that one question about having the ordinance ongoing.
Yes, to respond to that question, if it is the will of the council for us to prepare such an ordinance, we can do so and have it back to you next week.
Well, I so move. And to me, whither goeth this ordinance, so goeth the other. So it wouldn't be the retroactive one, which I'm not 100% sure how I feel about that. But thank you.
Yes.
Thank you,
In
Councilwoman.
council on Tuesday.
Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Walters.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Echeverria, when Prop 34, or whatever it was, passed last fall, there was controversy surrounding that it would loosen up the campaign requirement, campaign fund reporting requirements in the state as opposed to what currently existed at that time. Did the city attorney's office take a look at it at that time for its impact on our laws here?
We were aware of it, and we believed that there would be an impact. I believe that the Ethics Commission can speak to the magnitude of that impact better than we can. I think it was not anticipated that the impact would be as great as it has been, practically speaking.
Yes, when Prop 34 was passed, one of the things that we first did was to look and see what we needed to notify city candidates about in terms of reporting requirements and so forth that affected them and their campaigns, since obviously they were already underway at the time that the measure passed. Again, as I was saying earlier to Councilmember Wax, one of the things that we knew was that independent expenditures were on the rise, but we had no ability to know the full scope of that until we saw how it played out in the primary election.
Well, if you knew the independent expenditures were on the rise and that this Prop 34 did nothing to limit that, it would seem to me that you would have acted in advance of the filing for the candidates, because they've already filed at this point. When you're coming in now, there's no new filing. You're coming in at the general election. Now, I support what you're trying to do, but it seems to me that you just let a whole election cycle go by and remain silent on that, because, as you said, you don't know the extent. You knew it was rising. If you knew it was rising, and Prop 34 was going to allow for it to increase even more and relax the reporting requirements, it seems to me that some action would have and should have been taken in advance of this whole cycle of elections. There's one candidate who is complaining the loudest about the independent expenditures and about the requirement being relaxed, but it seems to me that if those expenditures were, and it's not Joel, if that candidate were the beneficiary of some of those expenditures, the voice would not be so loud, and perhaps it didn't bring attention to it before because the candidate was hoping to receive them. I don't know. But it seems to me that the Ethics Commission has been an effective organization in watching for campaign expenditures and reporting and opening up the process. And I'm very disappointed that you slept through this, and that's what it is. Or you know, you say you didn't act, but you knew that it was independent expenditures were on the rise, but you didn't know how high they were going to be. How high did they have to be in order to be reported? And in order to be reported in a timely fashion. It seems to me that the whole premise on which our ethics ordinance is built is one of reporting in a timely fashion. So I think you really blew this one and blew it in a big way. And I'm going to support the ordinance today, or the amendment, whatever it's going to be to this.
Thank you, Councilwoman. The chair recognizes Councilman Ridley Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the council. I rise simply to support the effort to continue the matter for the following reasons. First, I take note of the fact that this came to us today as a result of the council determining that we couldn't or were not prepared to decide when it came to us earlier this week, and it was then referred to committee. The committee did deliberate, and they made a recommendation, which was essentially say no recommendation. It puts it back on our plate to try to decide. Our efforts this morning have in some ways been of a clarifying nature, but not sufficiently so. Now, I've been here long enough to appreciate some of what that means. On the merits, I think it means that there are a number of problems substantively, and I think Ms. Galanter has been most articulate about what those might very well be. And in terms of the process itself, I think Ms. Walters has spoken to what has been, to some extent, problematic. So I believe that the additional point of retroactivity, as Ms. Chick has referred to it, is an additional issue that speaks in part to the substance and to the process. Prospectively, then, seems to me that there is a need to not look at this in a very limited way as it applies to the election cycle in which we currently find ourselves, but what ought to be promulgated with respect to ordinances as they apply to elections in the future. All of that suggests to me that we are unfinished with this, and to move in the direction of enacting something of this significance that has this level of import is imprudent at a certain level, although I think there is widespread acknowledgement that disclosure ought to be normative, and there are matters that ought to be corrected. Perhaps the continuance then affords that opportunity. If it can be done, then so be it. But the level of debate, the level of discussion by those who are for and against our moving today causes me to appreciate the fact, Madam President, members of the council, that we ought to continue this to a time where we can finalize some of these outstanding issues.
All right, thank you. Mr. Fuhr.
Thank you, Madam President. I think that whatever we choose to enact should be posted on about $235,000 worth of Eller Media billboards around the city myself. But that's a whole other issue. I
think you'll get support for that if you want to make a motion.
I think we could get funding for that, actually. I wanted to actually separate the issue for a moment, because we've been talking about these two ordinances as though they are inextricably linked with each other. But first, I'm curious, I don't hear anybody arguing against the proposal that there be disclosure of the, I guess it's the scripts of the phone calls. No. Right? So, Madam President, just for what it's worth, there are two different sections at issue here. One pertains to the disclosure of independent campaign funding and so forth, but the other pertains to the disclosure of what is being conveyed in these electronic phone calls and other such. Does anybody object to that? Because I think that at a minimum, that should move forward, that whole issue. Ms. Krinsky, did you want to respond to that?
No, I simply wanted to point out that would be our Section 8.
Right.
And it includes...
None of you are showing up on the mic. So can we get her mic on? So go ahead.
I wanted to try to identify which part of the proposed ordinance. It's our Section 8, and it would provide both the scripts of not simply phone calls, but other kinds of electronic communications that are sort of in an anomalous fashion treated differently than radio or TV ads, be deposited with the commission as a repository, and that in the course of those communications that the group that's paying for the call be identified so that voters not be left blind.
See, colleagues, I think to start with consensus and then build from there, I don't know if there's any difference of opinion on this issue, but I think this one should move forward without meaningful disagreement. With regard to the other, where there is meaningful disagreement, I'd like to first ask the Ethics Commission team that's before us if, given the comments that you've heard so far, you had any recommendations for finding common ground that could move forward today, because there will be otherwise contention that may result in no consensus. Do you have some suggestions?
I would just offer two comments. One is in response to the fuller range of proposals the Commission might make. We've heard a number of issues raised, and that's something that, as our President indicated, we're coming back to, as we always do after the election. We'll be looking comprehensively at that. But more specifically to the ordinances before you, I would simply remind the Council that there are two ordinances, one that deals with the runoff election moving forward, and one, a distinct ordinance that looks back at the April election. So there are two separate ordinances, one that looks retrospectively and one that does look forward only.
Well, for one thing, I mean, at a minimum, I think it would be a shame if we were to deep six the Section 8 provision for the sake of the disagreement on the other stuff. Regarding the other issues, it does seem to me that there are three different potential timelines we could adopt. One is fully retroactive, another is prospective but subsequent to this election cycle, and another is prospective from another date, today, or a date close to today. And as we try to find, so I'm in favor of finding something we can move forward and agree upon. and trying to find a place where we could get consensus among our colleagues. On Section 8, I think it exists. On the other, I think most of the issue is mostly the timeline. When Mr. Hernandez rose to spoke very eloquently at the inception of this debate, he made very clear his support for the concept. The question was the timing of the concept. So with that in mind, do you have some recommendations that you might offer to us? Trying to get to yes here, and I think there are some ways to do that quickly if we can.
Well, I do think that there are some options here. Obviously, the second ordinance, the shorter one, is what seeks to go back and recapture to January 1st. And I think the concerns that have been raised by Councilmember Galanter really deal with that second ordinance. What are we going to do for sort of those smaller organizations that are now essentially being put out and putting to the inconvenience of having to do some recapture? Interesting.
In 3 days. I mean,
In 3 days.
I don't mind the recapture.
And I think that presents some options. If you think the 72 hours is too abbreviated, you could extend it. If you think that the $1,000 threshold that triggers that recapture is too low, so too many mom and pop organizations are going to be pulled into that, you could raise it, and you could seek to recapture only as to groups that did expenditures of over $10,000 or $20,000. You could also recognize that certain of these organizations, namely the political parties, are going to have to be reporting all this information on July 1st. So one could, or July 30th, I'm sorry. So as to those organizations that are already going to have to report, so assumedly they're already keeping those records, one could perhaps have greater expectations for them to act more quickly and look to do a prompt recapture for those organizations. So I think those are options here. Obviously, our approach and our recommendation was to go with the more rigorous recapture, and in part, it was based on no one squawking. No one came forward and told us that this was too onerous. We invited unions, we invited the parties, we invited the world at large to tell us if this was a problem, and no one came forward and indicated that they had concerns. If they had, we may well have looked for some of the middle ground that you're suggesting. So I do think that there are options here, and I think one can look at a higher monetary threshold, one can look at extending the 72 hours, one can look at limiting this second recapture provision to those groups who are going to have to report anyway and simply move it up to a meaningful time. So I think those are other ways to slice this, although again, having heard no objection from anyone, our recommendation was to go the full way.
All right, let me ask, your time's up, and I have 3 more people who want to be heard. Let me just ask procedurally, if we were, as I seem to hear evolving here, if the council were to want to change any of these ordinances from the way they are drafted, what does that do procedurally, if anything? I mean, you've presented us with 2 draft ordinances. And sometimes, since we're at a first reading, I don't think it does anything, but I just want to clarify that.
You can pick and choose or select either one of the 2 ordinances, and we can modify.
But if somebody amends one, for example, if somebody makes a motion to, as Ms. Krinsky suggested, to change the threshold or change the time, that we could legally make that amendment here on the floor and it would just get incorporated.
Yes, correct.
Okay, there's no extra.
Correct.
Okay, that's all I want to check. All right, Mr. Hernandez is next. Now we're up to 4. Go ahead.
Members of the council, I think that, I'm sorry Mr. Ridley Thomas's views weren't on the citywide ballot because he made some sense. I know that Mr. Wax's name was on the ballot in my district, and judging by my constituents' votes, I don't have to take that voice into account right now. And I say that, Mr. Wax, because you addressed your comments to me personally, and I took them personally. Something I've learned in this business you're not supposed to do. Now, members of the council, when I talk about the tainting of a process, it's a serious principle for me. See, I'm not up for re-election, and I'm not running for public office again. What I clearly understand is that the voters voted for Prop 34, and we're pretending that was not a voters' initiative. We're pretending that they did not cast the ballot on Prop 34. I know that this election basically happened April the 10th, and the activity happened before that, but the reality is today is April 27th, 17 days later. On April 20th, we have a letter from the Ethics Commission explaining the two ordinances 10 days later. And because they held two public hearings, 5 hours each, they believe public notice was served. That's it. And we're talking about an issue that's going to impact this entire city. The city attorney was able to draft those ordinances, have them before us in 13 days. When have we seen that happen? And I'm supposed to believe this is a non-tainted process. Everybody wants to be objective about it. It's not important that the collective units, like labor, and parties like the Democratic Party, exercise their rights according to the rules. Now we have to close the loophole that was created by Prop 34, that was voted on by the voters. I mean, that's what I'm hearing very clearly. And this council knows better. Members, I'm talking about a principle here. And that's why it's objectionable to me. You see, Mr. Wax, when we were talking about the citywide mailers that you sent out that were basically using taxpayer dollars, it was legal. You got a confirmation from the Ethics Commission you could do that, even though no other candidate could do that. But you could, under the rules. Today, we're all tainting ourselves. That's why I thought I'd disclose up front where I was coming from. From my perspective, I would just, and again, Mr. Ridley Thomas made some sense. We should go back, we should look at it, we should talk about it. It's not something you change overnight. We're talking about the election process. And that's what I'm seeing before us. And I'm sorry that I feel this way, but that's the way I feel. I did not hear my constituents complaining about it. I heard the candidates complaining about it. Members of the council, again, I'm willing to support Mr. Ridley Thomas's recommendation that we review this a little bit more before we take action. I just wanted to point out that this is something, the election was April 10th, today's April 27th, the letter's dated April 20th, and we think we had full public participation. Thank you.
Mr. Burnson.
I'm not sure, maybe I was out when I heard when Mr. Ridley Thomas' proposal was to to hold it until Tuesday. What I would suggest is this, rather than hold it till Tuesday, because we don't know if we're going to have 12 people here on Tuesday or not, and we're going to have to debate this on second reading anyway, and we'll have every opportunity to, and if there are any changes to the ordinance, then it will automatically go over another week. Is that not correct, Pete?
Correct.
So, which is probably going to happen anyway if there are any changes. What I would propose is that if I withhold today, it will automatically go over 1 week till Friday, but it will not require 12 votes to be put into play. It will just, it will take, I think, go into, it will become law 30 days later, but it will.
No, you may have been out of the room. There is no 30-day wait.
There is no
on
30
this one.
days, okay.
Publication.
But it has a, but it's retroactive at any rate, is it not? As far as the disclosure concerned on the,
Yes, again, it depends on the form that the council
Okay.
approves.
Okay, as I said before, I don't care whether you're a Democrat, whether you're a Republican. I recognize the fact that a Proposition 34 was passed. I don't know that people understood. I'm not saying that frequently people vote for things that are not evident in what they're voting for. And I don't think that the public really understood that they were providing for the ability for people to provide soft money and non-disclosure, because if you go out and talk, Mr. Hernandez, if you go out and talk to your constituents and don't talk about this election, just talk about whether they want to know where the money's coming from that people give to candidates, I think you're going to find that virtually every one of them are going to want to know. So what we're really talking about is the disclosure. I don't care about the amounts. I mean, you know, yeah, we care about the one thing that I think that we can't do anything about under First Amendment procedures is we can't stop people from buying offices, unfortunately. But maybe what the Ethics Commission ought to be working on in the future is if when a candidate puts in an inordinate amount of personal money because of wealth, that there ought to be some matching funds or something that would even the scales a little bit, because I don't believe that you ought to be able to buy an office. And I don't believe that people ought to be able to blindside anybody, because they're not really blindsiding the candidate. they're blindsiding the people out there who expect a fair and even election, and I think that we have a flaw in that, and it needs to be corrected. So I'm going to withhold on both of these today. They'll go over till Friday. You have every opportunity to look at everything that's in there. Anybody that wants to make any changes, you can make those changes, and we'll vote on them on next Friday when we can achieve a completion on it, because we can't do that today, and we may not be able to do it Tuesday.
All right, let me just tell you, I still have 4 people who want to be heard. The attendance as of this moment, what are these X'd out ones? That means he will be here, all right. We'll have 10 on, it is anticipated there will be 10 people here on Tuesday and on Wednesday and 11 on Friday. So, just so you know. Mr. Ridley Thomas.
Madam President, members of the council, I think it's still the case that this discussion is useful, but it has not caused us to form the level of consensus that would result in us moving this forward. I do believe that that's possible pursuant to more work being done, thus the continuance is in order. The additional point that I want to make, pursuant to the remarks made by the President of the Ethics Commission about the lack of input of a critical nature that would have resulted in, pardon me, the ordinance as it is proposed being revised or altered in some way. Regrettably, that which is being proposed is being done in the context of a particularly volatile moment and or politically charged context. That in and of itself can have a very chilling effect on the sober input that might be offered for fear of an opposing candidacy or those who would be surrogates using those remarks against whoever might have made them. And so I do not believe that we can view this as if people can afford to be dispassionate without consequence. And because I believe that so strongly, it makes more of a case for us taking a few moments back, a few steps back, I should say, affording those who may not have as much at stake at this moment to review this and make an intelligent and informed decision about what it is we are saying and doing, because in the final analysis it does have far-reaching implications for how the public perceives the political process, and beyond that it has implications for how those who are office seekers behave, and if in fact this triggers another attempt for individuals to flout or skirt the intention or the intent of the law. I think we should be very, very circumspect about the implications of what it is we may be doing. Yeah? Wait a minute.
Okay, Ms. Walters is next.
Well, I couldn't agree more with Mr. Burnson, and it doesn't happen often. But
now, whose reputation is going to be ruined by that one?
But as I understand the First Amendment, the courts have ruled that folks have this right to, in effect, buy elections, put as much money as they want to in their own elections, and apparently it goes the same for elections for candidates that they support. I think it's a shame that we have one person who's paid for 4 seats at the campaigns of 4 seats at the school district, which constitutes a majority of that board. There's got to be something beyond free speech there that a person can overwhelmingly finance these seats and thus control the votes of a public body, or certainly have the appearance of controlling the votes, whether they feel that they do or not. I think that this needs, will benefit from some additional looking at it, but you know, we can additionally look at it for a long, long time. I think we ought to pass it and keep working on it and see what we can come up with that's better. I think that to have a party that does business with the city and is regulated by the city, putting up these horrendous billboards all over the city supporting one candidate, it seems to me also an egregious violation of the spirit of campaign law, of campaign financing law. You know, I just don't know how we get at all of these things. We've got agencies that receive funding from the city in one way or another. And if you look closely, you find them campaigning for somebody in one seat or another. It's a serious problem. And it does bear a lot of close scrutiny. And I would hope that whatever is voted on today would not be the last time that we visit this. And I hope that the Ethics Commission will take away a lesson from this, that any time there's campaign finance law reform or whatever on the ballot, you need to, for the state or federal, you need to examine it. And for any other city, if any other city is doing something, you need to examine it immediately as soon as it qualifies for the ballot, for all of its implications and what forms or forms it may take for the city of Los Angeles. And you need to say to the candidates at the very next filing, like you invite them to these informative meetings, that we don't know the full extent, we don't know what will happen or entirely what has happened with Proposition X. In this case, it would be 34. But these are the impacts we feel it will have upon the city.
Ms. Walters?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Pacheco?
I was going to call the question, but I'm not sure if we're calling 3 questions or 1 question on the whole packet. But I want to move the previous question, unless we're waiting for Mr. Holden.
Let me suggest that you not do that quite yet. I'll
yet?
just move you down the thing. And the reason I suggest that is that I believe that at this moment, we do not have any motions on the floor with respect to these ordinances. The only motion pending before us at the moment, there are 2 motions. One motion, remember, this came without a recommendation. This came so that the council would have the opportunity to debate it. Mr. Feuer's up next. Ms. Mizikowski is up after that. I'll bet you anything we're going to have a motion here before we're done.
Well, then, if I can't call the question, then I
Then you
need
want
to
to
make
talk.
the motion.
Go
No,
ahead.
Just move approval for the entire item.
All right. So you're moving approval on both of the ordinances. Okay, thank you. Mr. Feuer, it's your turn.
Thank you, Madam President. To continue on my comments from before, in the interest of trying to get a consensus on something that can move today, I'm going to move a substitute that we adopt what is called Section 8 of the package we have before us. That is the provision that requires disclosure regarding telephone calls or other electronic information, so we don't end up having these really scurrilous telephonic communications being made without any accountability. And with regard to the other aspect of this, looking around and seeing where I think the votes are and where they're not, I want to assure that we get something today. So I was going to move Section 2, which I believe is the prospective disclosure requirement, prospective from the date of the effective date of the ordinance. And I want to ask one of the staff members at the table what accompanying provisions would be consistent with Section 2's prospective application of this from the effective date of the ordinance, not after the election, but from the effective date. I believe that if we were to amend Section 5 and Section 6 to insert the effective date in the ordinance in place of other dates that are listed there, we could achieve that goal, I think.
So you would be proposing, if I, just to clarify, Section 2, Section 4, Section 5, Section 6 with the, rather than April 11th, the date this ordinance were to become effective.
Section 5 actually has
Also
reference
has
to...
an April 11th
So,
date.
so again, those, rather than
Yes.
April 11th, would be from the date that this takes effect
Right, and
forward.
Section 7 as well.
Right.
And what I would
as well as
recommend
8.
is that, I don't think we've finished the conversation with regard to the other points, but rather than do nothing today, we should finish that conversation by sending the balance of the provisions of this for a further committee discussion that might ensue as soon as next week. So, well, I'm hoping we can get enough votes just to, at a minimum, have a majority of the council support something as opposed to nothing. So that's my
Well,
recommendation.
So let's just clarify it in the reverse and make sure we
Yeah,
all
the-
understand each other.
the-
That what you are recommending, and this is the difference between Mr. Pacheco's motion and yours, there's two ordinances. Let's take the long ordinance first. With respect to the long ordinance that has 9 sections as written, you are suggesting that we adopt all of it except Section 3, and that that's the retroactivity provision, and that we change the dates in Sections 5 and 6 from April 11th to the effective date of the ordinance.
And that we send the balance to the committee for further discussion so we can...
But
decide
that's what I want to clarify, is what
Right.
is the balance? The
Well, the balance would be-
is just that retroactivity one.
That's correct.
Okay, so that's that's the first ordinance. That's the only difference between Mr. Feuer's motion and Mr. Pacheco's motion with respect to the long ordinance. The short ordinance, which has, I'm on the wrong page here. The short ordinance has 4 sections.
Section, okay.
If I could, and this shorter ordinance applies specifically and only to the period January 1 through April 10th.
All right, so the
all of its
only,
provisions apply to that period,
Only.
only to that period.
right, the only issue there would be when that report has to be made.
Is that right? Because the report...
believe.
Yeah, I'm not making a motion with regard to that ordinance at all. I wanted to focus on the other stuff. Others can deal with this one.
Information requested on this ordinance be provided July 30th. Did I hear that?
Yeah,
Anyway?
Right.
Yes.
As to the political parties, they're going to be reporting this information on July 30th. Our intent in trying to have a 72-hour clock for all those groups, and obviously there are some within it who don't have to report on July 30th, but the political parties' expenditures and contributions are going to be reported July 30th. Our intent here was to try to have that information made available to the voters
right.
before they vote.
Now, wait, you're coming up later. We've got 4 more people again. Ms. Mizikowski.
Well, I was going to ask for the previous question, but I think, given the question, I appreciate the ethics suggestion on item, the shorter version. And I think in what Ms. Galandra says, 72 hours is just too onerous. And so I'm trying to figure out if there's something between the 72 hours and July 30th. The point about July 30th, it's post all elections, so all of these things that we would hope to discover, we might not be able to discover. Other than the parties, which essentially we know what they did and who they supported, so they're less, to my way of thinking, less of a concern than the other independent expenditures that we may not know about. Let me ask you, what other type or do you believe might have been independent expenditures that would be captured by this that are not now, and would not be reporting on July 30th?
This is on the shorter,
Right.
the shorter of the ordinances. Certainly, the organizations who do not have a filing requirement come July 30th, unions, for
The
example.
Sierra Club, for example.
Sierra Club unions, for example, if they're not considered a recipient committee under state law, they would not have a filing requirement at the end of July.
So this gets to those which might have been involved in advocacy, in expenditure, and I definitely believe that we need to do that. So let me just, well, I don't know, does the Ethics Commission have another alternative recommendation other than the 72 hours?
One alternative could be, rather than 72 hours after the effective date, you could have it 2 weeks after the effective date of this. That would give us time to certainly notify and inform as many people as we can about
Let me
it.
go ahead and then make that recommendation, that we, with respect to the short ordinance, that we change the reporting time to 15 days.
From 72 hours to
From
15 days.
72 hours to 15
Right
days.
smack in the middle of Section 2? Is that what we're talking about?
Right, and the
Okay.
only other question that Leanne raised, and I don't know whether or not there's any fuss about it, is the threshold, which was over $1,000. That does seem to me to be rather tight. I appreciate that it's reasonable, but for purposes of this, I don't know if there's another suggestion you might make above that threshold.
You know, you could raise it to $10,000. It would eliminate the
Let's do that.
smallest
I mean,
of
we
committees.
have some of the, candidates and others who start at lower thresholds, so 1,000 is just very, very tight, and I'm not even sure that people who would have had no impact or even expectation that they would be required to be captured under this would be. So let's raise that to 10,000, so that an independent expenditure of more than 10,000 will have to be reported for anything that was done in the previous campaign, the primary, up to 15 days after the effective date of this ordinance.
And let me ask you, while you're there, there's some $1,000 thresholds in the long ordinance as well. Are you proposing that those be changed or not? Just,
For purpose of consistency, I think that makes sense. Now, whether or not that's going to leave a whole lot of others who are going to go out there making just $10,000, $9,999 expenditures, I don't know. But again, I think that those are relatively modest. What we were really after with the much more significant expenditures.
all right, so I just want to make sure when we ultimately get to a vote, if we ever get there, that we all know what we're voting on. So, Mr. Fuhr, would you accept Ms. Mizakowski's amendments to your motion, which is to change the threshold to 10? Okay. I'm
Andrew
sorry,
Rhodes mentioned
were you done?
I am, other than just because as we were discussing it here, there's been reference to the billboard industry. And members of the council, I'm going to make a proposal that I'm going to ask Ethics to look at. The billboard industry, I think the reason it has been, there's concerns about it, is I believe that it is like, in this city, if not like in other cities, general media. And under the Federal Communications Commission in Washington, one of our TV stations could not decide to unilaterally make an independent expenditure of free airtime for a candidate. I believe that is precluded because we recognize the impact of media and the potency of media. They can make an endorsement if they choose to, but free airtime is something that I think they are precluded under the Federal Act. I liken billboards in this city to that media-wide impact. They have, 10,000 faces in this city of billboards, and monopoly. No one else has that ability. We can't put up signs independently easily, or at least nowhere near the size of that. Or if we do, then we raise questions about property owners who put them up. So I would like at least to suggest that the Ethics Commission look at whether or not billboards in this city would be precluded from that independent expenditure of the use of their billboards. I have no problem with their making contributions, but not the use of that media, which is so controlled, so effective, and so like other multimedia, or is a media communication, which is precluded from using their airwaves for that type of purpose.
All right, and while you're at it, you might look into the question of smaller newspaper publications that use their publications to solicit funds for candidates.
Ms. Galanter, if I could ask for clarification from Ms. Mizakowski. We've used both 2 weeks and 15 days. I just want to make sure where we are if this passes, we rewrite it.
2 weeks is what the Ethics Commission said. We'll go with that.
That's fine, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Wax.
Mr. Echeverria, I asked a question before, and you gave the answer I was hoping you would give, but as I keep looking at the ordinance, I don't see it, although admittedly I'm reading it for the first time. And I just really want to make absolutely certain that the disclosure we're talking about is not only the expenditure either by an independent expenditure committee or a party to its members of an amount on behalf of someone, but that we also have disclosure of who contributed to that independent expenditure committee or to that party that made that cut, so that we know the real source of the money as opposed to just the pass-through entity.
Both are required.
Okay, Mr. Pachak and I were looking at it, we couldn't find the wording, but I'm going to take your word that they're required. required. Mr. Fuhrer, I really have to strongly disagree with your attempt to try to get something that we can all live with here. Let's get very clear what this is not doing. This is not in any way dealing with the fundamental problem that if one wants to give $1 million to spend on behalf of a candidate, they now have found a way to indirectly do it, whereas everyone else who wants to play by the rules is limited to $1,000. So we don't get at the real heart. We don't get at the second thing, that when, say, a billboard company does what it did in your case, it not only spends the money, but it now opens it up for the very candidate who benefited by it to get public funds and spend unlimited amounts of money. And when public funds were only supposed to have been given if you agree to obey the spending limits. So here's what you do. You play the game. You say, Mr. Friend, make me an independent expenditure. Friend is an independent expenditure by which you benefit. You still get the public funds, and you also don't have to abide by the spending limits. That's the greatest fraud of all time.
Mr. Fuhrer is not the person.
No, Mr. Fuhrer is the victim in this case. So we're not getting at that. And we're not getting at the fact that someone who gives you $1,000, and that's all they're supposed to, can then turn around and give another $1 million through independent entity. We're not getting, all we have here is disclosure. One simple thing, if you're going to get by all that, if you're going to spend it within, quote, the loopholes, at least say who it is. Disclose yourself so that the public can at least make some judgment as to the appropriateness of that or not in weighing their candidates. You know, the loopholes there, you're getting through with it, you're doing it all, but there's disclosure. People know about it. If we can't by next week get 8 votes for that, because on second reading, Mike, you only need 8 votes. We can't get 8 votes for that, then it's this council that should shame itself, and it's this council that should be held accountable for it. And don't water down the little bit that we have. Let's do as Mr. Bernsen says, withhold on this, pass first the amendments like the Ms. Misikowski made, because they can be done on first reading, then withhold on the ordinance till next week. Next week, if you can't get 8 votes for that bare minimum, knowing that it's not getting to the real heart of it, then don't go any further. Sometimes nothing is better than something, because we will shame ourselves by doing only that much. And I think we can get the 8 votes by next week when the public pressure begins to build on this.
Mr. Hernandez.
Members of the council, again, if you believe strongly that this is the way you set public policy and you impact elections on these kinds of timeframes, I disagree. I firmly disagree. And it's because we're talking about, again, the election process. And I've seen systems established that on its face look like it's the right thing to do, but its reality is something else. And I will continue to advocate for a process that allows some thinking, a process that's inclusive, and a process that is not tainted by an election. And I strongly feel that the Ethics Commission has a responsibility to continue to reform our election processes, but I think it shouldn't happen in the middle of a campaign. That's the problem I'm having. You know, I disagreed when I felt that the mayor bought the school board elections, but he had the right to do what he did, and our community lost out. But I can't change that process. Now it can be changed, now it should be looked at, and I hope ethics looks at it. But they don't look at school board elections. I just think strongly that a well-thought-out process that includes a lot of participation is what's warranted here. And I don't think it should happen because, again, we have candidates who feel that they were treated unjustly in a process, who initiate review. I don't think it should happen in the kinds of timeframes we're talking about. Clearly, we're just making up rules right now. And again, I want to remind people that this process started April 10th, today's April 27th. And we're talking about impacting an election. Now, if that doesn't mean anything to people, then let's hold the election on a Saturday. Let's change the date. I mean, I'm sitting here saying you don't change the rules overnight. You go through a process, and that's what my position is about. It's not that I'm against disclosure, I'm for disclosure. I just think it should happen through a process, and I expect it to happen. I just am surprised to hear that we're trying to change the rules in the middle of the game.
Madam President, may I respond?
Yes, you may, but I've got 3 more people, and they'll keep coming.
Okay. Despite the fact that I'm a lawyer, I'll aim to be brief. I do want to clarify, because there have been a number of rumblings in regard to a political process or a tainted process, and I understand and I'm confident that the councilman's comments were no way intended to suggest that our body, which is a nonpartisan, neutral body, has acted in any way politically. This proposal was generated by our staff. The candidates responded to something that our staff generated. The approach that we adopted was supported not by one candidate, but by both candidates. And in fact, in the end, while we can't control the way this is covered in the media, and while the media has attributed it to one candidate, the approach that we adopted was that was endorsed by the other candidate and supported by both candidates. We are sensitive to changes in the rules midstream, and that's not what we've done here. So I wouldn't want it to go by without the clarification that this was not a political act generated by a particular candidate.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Pacheco. And then Ridley Thomas, and then Burnson. Go ahead.
Although the argument that we are changing the rules midstream sounds persuasive, the problem I have with the argument is that there's no changing in the ability to exercise your First Amendment right to give money to whoever you want to give money to. So we're not changing that rule. Now, if someone feels that by asking someone to identify themselves before they give the money is going to have the impact of that person not giving the money, then that really is a disservice to the voters. Because we should know where the money's coming from. The voters should be able to decide how the money is being funneled through these IEs. And maybe I speak from experience here because I was surprised that in my small city council race, the Democratic Party from the state, from the city of San Francisco, decided to spend $20,000 against another Democrat. And I don't know who paid that money. I don't know where that money came from. And maybe I have a personal issue with the way the Democratic Party is handling themselves, the Republican Party is handling themselves, in not disclosing who these financial individuals are. Because I'm sure if you looked at the balance sheet with the Democratic Party prior to the mayor's election and all this campaigning, you would see a certain balance. And I'm sure if you look at it now, you'll see a different balance of an infusion of money from certain individuals. And that's all we're asking, is to know who these individuals are. We're not asking these individuals not to give their millions of dollars. We're not asking them to give their thousands of dollars. We're just asking them to reveal who they are. So in one sense, I understand that the rules are changing, but they're not necessarily changing to the detriment of someone feeling they can spend their money. Unless knowing who you are is something you want to conceal before you give your money. If that's your goal as a contributor, to conceal your identity, in this case, you should be very threatened by this ordinance. But I don't think we embrace and endorse concealing this information as a body, and that's why I don't feel that this is a rule change that has a severe impact on the players. I just think the players now know that there's a little more they have to tell us before they give their thousands of dollars to that IE.
Okay, Mr. Ridley Thomas.
Madam President, members of the council, I do not think for one moment that we ought to attempt to reduce the impact or the significance of what's before us. Mr. Pacheco, I could not disagree with you more in that regard, although I do rise to reinforce the wisdom that you communicated now some 50-plus minutes ago to continue this item. There are those who wanted to debate this, but once again, I think the debate has reinforced the point that we have a veritable multiplicity of amendments and the like, and we are trying to do committee work in council, and we absolutely know what the hazards of such might very well be. It would seem to me that we ought to take a deep breath, review all of that which is before us. The executive director of the commission, the president of the commission, the representative of the city attorney's office, distill this and bring it back at a time where we can put this together. We have a series of amendments that are perhaps useful, but this no more than compounds the very thing that we ought to be trying to avoid, namely to do good public policy. Disclosure ought to be consistent with clear public policy making, and I think we have gotten ourselves into a bit of a morass here that is avoidable. The rush to do that which has come before us is probably not, as I say, in the best interest of the public, particularly if we can buy a few days and try to sort this out. I don't know what is lost in that process, and would seem to think that an appeal to us not to make decisions in an environment such as this, causing it to be further inadvisable, would be the way that we ought to proceed. And if we were to do that, I think we can come up with that which is responsible, clear, and will advance the issue of reform in a way that makes sense. I would so move.
All right, just so I'm clear, you were moving to continue it until when?
The top of the week, I guess, or the next time we're convened, that they can sort all this out and come back with us to...
The only reason I'm asking you to clarify a date, and we can all make that up together if you want, is that...
Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever day makes sense.
For the purposes of what happens to this council file, it has to be continued to some time we can
Wednesday
specify.
gives them enough time, I suspect.
May
Tuesday?
2nd.
Tuesday, Wednesday?
Well,
Tuesday?
You pick. I'm sorry, Tuesday.
Tuesday.
All right, so Mr. Ridley Thomas's motion is to continue the item until Tuesday. Mr. Bernstein, did you want to be heard? All right, well, nobody else has asked to speak, and the expired light just came up, so the debate is now closed. Yes.
I just wanted to clarify with the two motions that are out there.
I'm about to do all of that. Hang on, that's why I wanted to cut off the debate here. These are the motions that I have. Somebody will tell me if I missed one. And this is the order in which I believe it makes sense for us to vote on them. First was Ms. Mizikowski's series of amendments changing the threshold from 1,000 to 10,000 and changing the time from the compliance time from 72 hours to 2 weeks. Okay, 14 days.
2 weeks.
No, just hold on. Let me list them all. I'm not calling the roll yet. That's one. If those amendments were passed, they would apply consistently through both ordinances. Mr. Fewer made a motion, Mr. Pacheco actually made the initial motion, which is what would wind up as the summary motion, which was to adopt the two ordinances as presented. Okay. Mr. Fewer made a motion, substitute motion that simply eliminated Section 3 of the long ordinance, but was to adopt the rest of it. And it was not to disapprove it, but to hold that issue for, and to change the dates. Yes, and the dates on Section 5 and 6, that's right, change the dates on 5 and 6 to the effective date of the ordinance from April 11th. Then we had Mr. Ridley Thomas's motion to continue the whole thing till Tuesday, and that, I think, is everything that's on the table before us.
There was also a motion that amends the report, but not the ordinances. That's a Chick motion to request city attorney prepare
Okay.
an ordinance for future elections.
That's on the ordinance. And Cindy?
A point of order, I would just like to suggest that we vote on the amendments if we can, and then the vote to continue, because if it's then continued, we've got the amendments made rather than on Tuesday
Well,
having
that's
to
why
amend
I
it after
listed them
that.
first, actually.
Point of order.
Great minds, yes, sir.
I have no problem with that. I just wonder how many votes it takes to approve the amendments. And second of all, if we continue, we may be in the same situation next week.
Yes,
If we
that's not a
withhold-
point of order.
If
You
the
already
ordinances
did
are
that.
withheld upon...
Then vote no on, that's debating, that's not, all right.
No on continuation.
So, now wait a minute. Ordinarily, I'm going to leave this up to you, we'll do it whichever way you guys want to do it. Ordinarily, the motion to continue would take precedence over everything else. All right. You have to do that, is that correct? Where's my city attorney? You have to do the motion to continue first? All right.
Parliamentally, yes.
Okay, in that case, we'll do first, we're voting first on the motion to continue the whole matter until Tuesday. Now, if it passes, here's my question. If it passes, can we vote today on the amendments, or would those, okay.
No, you would put those on the
It would be-
agenda for
They would
Tuesday.
stay on the agenda, and we, okay. All right. So the first,
Well, let me ask you a question. I'm sorry.
the first vote is on Mr. Ridley Thomas's motion to continue the item until, the city attorney tells me we have to do it this way.
Point of order, on a have to, can this body agree to suspend the rules to allow the vote first on the amendments?
Okay, that's a good
Cindy, all you'd
question.
have to do is pass the
Gail,
amendments and
yes?
then withhold.
Wait,
them.
wait,
Yes.
hold it, guys. We have a city attorney to do
Yes,
this
you
for us.
could, you could take the
All
10
right, so the
votes.
first motion will be on whether to suspend the rules in order to vote first on adding the amendments. Okay, open the roll on suspending the rules.
It's an abuse of authority to suspend the rules.
Just vote. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
6 ayes, 4 noes.
All right, that was
I told
not
you.
approved. Therefore, the first motion before us is Mr. Ridley Thomas's motion to continue the item until Tuesday. Open the roll.
Which enjoys the
Close.
Ethics Commission's concurrence.
Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
4 ayes, 6 noes.
All right, that was not approved. Now, that brings us to Ms. Mizakowski's amendments. Okay, and, see,
It takes
it only
8
took an
votes to
extra,
amend the ordinance.
I'm sorry?
8 votes to amend the ordinance to answer Mr.
Yeah,
Brinson's question.
Okay,
the
that's your
answer.
question, thank you. I'm
call the
glad you
roll.
guys have this all together.
May I ask for
Mr.
clarification?
Echeverria, yes.
I may have missed it when you mentioned the amendments before. Does this include changing the amounts, the dollar amounts to
Yes.
$10,000?
Yes.
Yes.
It
okay,
was,
thank you.
no, hold on. This was the threshold from 1,000 to 10,000.
Correct.
The dates in the short ordinance, actually, I think it occurs also once in the long ordinance.
On both, from the effect, from April 11th to the
From April
effective
11th
date.
to the effective date of the ordinance.
If I could-
Now, that would not apply to Section 3, which deals specifically with, I don't think. But, see, we didn't,
Yes, it would.
I think there's some
That's too
confusion here. Ms. Zukowski moved to, regarding the short ordinance, reporting time from 72 hours to 2 weeks.
Right.
And the threshold from 1,000 to 10,000, and also in the long ordinance for, to make it consistent.
right.
And then Mr. Fuhr had another motion which
Yeah, we
dealt-
aren't up to him yet. Yes, Mr. Fuhr.
President, with regard, I just want to be sure I understand the implications of Ms. Mizakowski's amendments with regard to Section 8. Are there any? Section 8 is the telephonic or electronic communication.
Right, I think
No.
as to Section 8 and Section 2, the $1,000 amount should remain the same. I think Ms. Mizakowski, Councilmember Mizakowski was trying to change the $1,000 in the other provisions, not 2 and 8.
Oh, yeah, that's
So
probably
that, as a point, and
All
again,
right.
and so in Section 8, the dollar figure stays the same, and the time within which one must provide information would remain the same, not be extended.
Right,
pursuant
and
to
this is
Fine.
prospective. This is not a retrospective provision, so those would stay the same. Are we, thank you, Hal, just hold on a minute. Are we all clear on then which items are, Peter, you with us? Because if not, we're going to clarify this before we do it.
In the long ordinance, in Section 3, that amount is changed to $10,000.
In Section 3, I believe so.
And the
but
date changes from April 11th to the effective date.
No, I don't think it does in that one. That's the question. But that, no, Feuer's motion was to not adopt that section today at all. We haven't gotten to voting on that yet. We haven't gotten to Feuer's motion yet. We're just trying to, I know that, I'm just trying to get us there. That's what I just said. We haven't gotten to Feuer's motion, which would have deleted Section 3 at this
All right.
time. But we are still trying to clarify, why don't we just leave Section 3? We'll do the amendments with respect to Section 3 when we get that far. Let's vote on amending all the other provisions.
I have a
Is that
suggestion.
okay? Can
Except,
you follow that?
and 3 is staying 1,000 on April 11th?
We haven't dealt with 3
Okay.
yet, okay? So we're dealing with the amendments to all of the other sections of the long ordinance and to the short ordinance, okay? Open the roll.
I have, wait a minute.
Excuse me, we closed debate on this.
Really want to vote on all of them at one time. We're going to vote on them individually, are we not?
You want to vote on each
Yes,
change in
yes,
each
I don't-
ordinance
I don't-
individually?
I don't agree with all of the
Madam Chair,
amendments.
I just said, Did Councilmember Miskowski not include Mr. Fuhr's amendment? Because I heard him make his amendment first, and then you adjusted it.
The chair had indicated she wanted them separate, so that's fine. So mine were relative to the time and disclosure amounts.
Okay.
Mr. Fuhr's amendment specifically dealt with, unless I missed something
So then
here.
are we taking Mr. Fuhr's first, or Mr. Miskowski?
No, we're taking Ms. Mizikowski's first with respect to amending the ordinances as they were presented. The next motion is whether to substitute Mr. Fuhr's proposal for Mr. Pacheco's proposal. And before we vote on that, we're going to go specifically through the only difference between them, which is Section 3, to see if we need to amend any of the dates or thresholds within Section 3. I'm just holding Section 3 on the table right this minute.
Madam President,
Yes,
in light
sir.
of Mr. Burnson's remarks and Mr. Hernandez's remarks, might I have a second to make it one suggestion which you would deem original?
No, wait, if it's closed for him, then it's got to be closed for you, too.
All right.
Is the...
This is
Yeah, right.
procedural.
I'm trying my best. Go ahead.
I move continuance on this item.
Out of order.
It's not out of order, actually, but
We voted on it.
we've already voted on it. All right, now, let's stay cool, guys. I know it's past lunchtime, but hang on here. Are we ready? We are now voting on Ms. Mizikowski's amendments to the short ordinance and to sections 1, 2, and 4 to the end of the long ordinance. Open the roll.
That's for a no
Close.
vote.
Well, I don't know where you've been, Hal. We've been going through it for the last hour. Open the roll, close the roll.
Point of order.
You can withhold.
No, pardon me a moment, please. They do different things, and I may support, if you're saying 1, 2,
Well,
and 3.
Hal, this is what we've been debating. You want to vote on them separately? Is that all you're asking me? We'll vote on them separately. All right, the first amendment is in the long ordinance, Section 2, the third line, change $1,000 to $10,000.
No,
I
that's stay
believe
1,000.
That is the one where the 10,000 would remain in place. If I
All right, well,
understood.
no, wait, you're not arguing this. Cindy, is that one where you're moving to amend or not? Okay, never mind, I withdraw that. Section 3, we're holding on the table for the moment. Section
5.
5. And the amendment there would be
Change April
changing the
11th.
date from April 11th to the effective date of the ordinance. Open the roll on that change. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
8 ayes, 2 noes.
All right, that's approved. Section 6, the change there would, now that's is that one that changes to 10,000?
Yes.
Okay. Open the roll on changing the threshold in line 2 and in line 5 from $1,000 to $10,000. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
8 ayes, 2
All
noes.
right, that's approved. Next one is...
In that section
that-
also, the effective dates.
The effective
would change.
date is,
Three lines from the end and 2 lines from the end.
right, okay. I'll mark them all for you, Conrad, I got them right here. Changes April 11th in the third line from the end and the second line from the end to the effective date of the ordinance. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
8 ayes, 2 noes.
Okay, that's approved. And I think that finishes the long ordinance, except for Section 3, which we'll come back to.
If you included him, I would have voted yes.
The short ordinance.
If you Section 3, I would have voted yes.
A lot of paper here, hold on. All right, here's the short ordinance. On the short ordinance, the first amendment would be in Section 2. Is that's a proposal to change it to 10,000?
Correct.
Okay, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
9 ayes, 1 no.
Okay, and about halfway down the paragraph, it says no later than 72 hours. That would be changed to 2 weeks. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
9 ayes, 1 no.
Okay. Mr. Burnson, you haven't voted against any of them yet. That brings us back to,
I voted against lowering the amount, I voted against...
yeah, we weren't lowering any amounts, we raised a few amounts here. Okay. Next, we're back to Section 3. Section 3 of the long ordinance. Ms. Mizikowski's motion, well, actually, were you moving to amend these as well? This is the 1,000, you want the 1,000 and the 72. The Section 3 is the retroactivity provision in the long ordinance.
I think for consistency, we should change that one.
All right, so now which one are you?
On Section 3, the 1,000 to 10.
All right, and how about the 72 hours to 2 weeks?
Yes.
Both of those, okay. Open,
And, I'm sorry, and the effective date from April 11th and the third line?
Effective date.
To effective date?
Oh, yeah. It says it'd be today instead of April 11th. Yeah, it would.
yeah, it's just,
Okay.
it's a question of when you, all right.
I understand.
So people would
That
still
stays.
have to report this
That stays.
before the general election, but they wouldn't have to do it in 3 days. Okay, open the roll on the
10,000.
proposed amendments. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
7 ayes, 3 noes.
Okay. Now, that brings us to Mr. Feuer's motion.
What's that mean, Madam Chair, that they didn't pass?
That was not approved.
That failed.
Okay, so that brings us to Mr. Feuer's motion, which is to substitute for the ordinances as drafted and now amended, the same thing minus all of Section 3.
Well, it didn't pass anyway.
It's just to substitute, it isn't adopting them
Right.
yet. It's substituting the long ordinance without Section 3.
Without Section 3.
Okay, open the roll. Close the roll. Okay, is everybody ready? What, this is only to substitute. This is not adopting any ordinances yet. This is substituting for the long ordinance as presented, the same ordinance as we've amended it, but without Section 3. Okay? Open the roll. This is to substitute. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
8 ayes, 2 noes.
All right, that's approved. Now what's before us is the two ordinances as amended by the deletion of Section 3 in the long one and by all these threshold changes and the rest of the stuff that we just did. Okay.
Point of information, Madam
We always
Chair.
get together sometime down the road.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Walters.
Point of information, please. I don't have the ordinance in front of me, so when you talk about substituting Section 3,
I'll read it to you. Would that be helpful?
that would be very helpful. My question on that is whether or not it removes the retroactivity, and if it does that mean that there's no reporting or accountability at all for that first election period?
But we
All right, let me read you what it says here, and with apologies if I get the amendments part wrong here. Disclosure of payments since primary nominating election. Any person that made or incurred, a person is not a that made or incurred one or more payments within the meaning of Government Code Section 85312, totaling more than 1,000, I think we changed that one, on or after April 11th, but before the effective date of this ordinance, for communications to members, employers, employees, shareholders, or families of members, employees, or shareholders of an organization in support of or opposition to a candidate for elective city office shall notify the City Ethics Commission by telegram, fax, or email within, I don't remember if we changed that or not, 2 weeks?
No.
We did not, within 72 hours after the effective date of this ordinance. So what it does, Rita, is it eliminates the provision that, for the time being, it eliminates a provision that requires a 72-hour compliance with the retroactivity. It does not preclude some other variation of this being dealt with, being adopted later, but it would not be included in this action.
If adopted, Section 3 would require reporting of expenditures that were made since April 11th to the effective date of the ordinance.
It's the gap. It doesn't go back to the primary.
I don't want to eliminate the need to report from April 11th to now, to the date the ordinance passes. To me, that would be a retro move.
And my understanding is that's how you voted.
But in that case, then you should vote, well, you're sort of stuck now, because we have voted to substitute. So what is before us at this moment?
Madam
is-
President,
yes, ma'am.
We haven't voted to substitute
I thought the
Section
vote
3.
on a substitute failed 7-3.
No, it was
no,
it was a
it passed 8-2.
vote to substitute. I said that at least 3 or 4 times. This was not to adopt an ordinance or not adopt it. It was to substitute Mr.
Feuer's.
Feuer's version of the ordinance, which lacked Section 3 for Mr. Pacheco's. The result of that vote remains before us, if we ever get there, to be either adopted or not adopted.
All right,
The answer
I'm
to
gonna
your
move-
question, I think, Ms. Walters, is that if we adopt the ordinance as it is now before us, without Section 3, that gap period is not covered.
All right.
That's not to say we couldn't adopt an additional ordinance that did cover it.
All right, we don't have an additional ordinance before us. This
but
is
we
what
could
we
get
have
one.
before us. So I'd like to move to reconsider because I voted for the substitution.
I ask for a no vote.
All right?
I vote.
We are now voting on, this is a motion to reconsider the motion to substitute. If this passes, we will again vote on whether to substitute.
and I'm asking
okay?
for
Right, and I would move that we vote to substitute with each.
No,
with
let's
three
do
and-
that one step at a time. We are moving first to reconsider the vote to substitute.
Ask you
So,
for no vote.
an aye vote will reconsider, a no vote will not reconsider. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
8 ayes, 2 noes.
All right, the item is now reconsidered.
Doesn't
So-
it take 10 votes for reconsideration, Madam Chair?
I don't know, does it? I don't think so.
Well, wait a minute. I thought it took 10 votes for reconsideration.
Hey, I
I'm
don't
asking
think so.
Gail.
She-
It takes
All
8
right, so
votes.
hold on, the city attorney is looking it up.
It's 8 votes.
8 votes, all right. So the matter is, once
It's 8
again,
votes to reconsider.
that's what she said,
Yes,
3
8
times
votes.
now. It is now before us.
I'm just
Point of
questioning the city
information.
attorney,
You
Madam
want to
Chair.
give
They've
a
been
chance to
tainted in
change
my
your mind?
eyes.
To
They're
reconsider by the
definitely
council
tainted in
is
my
over.
eyes.
Point of information.
I know. I've heard the 10 much more than I've heard the 8.
Yes, sir, what's your point of information?
Just a question, point of information, Mr. Echeverria, which ordinance provisions require disclosure of the contributions made and the expenditures made in the primary election?
The short one does.
That's
short
still
one
with
does.
us.
And
That's
have we
also
gotten
with
to the
us.
short one yet?
I'm trying desperately.
But we haven't gotten to the short one yet. Or I
No,
thought
no,
Mr.
we have
Fuhrer was
not.
trying to eliminate the short.
No, he's not.
and by
No,
the
no,
way-
no. Joe, he's
I'm
not.
I am not.
Okay, so the short one,
The
which
previous
deals with what
question was
happened.
moved a long time ago.
We're voting.
I
Point
think
of
we should
order.
just
Mike,
bring
could
in
you
lunch.
clarify what you're... Let Mike clarify. Oh, we'll get there. Mike, just clarify
Sure.
on the retroactivity to the primary.
I want to be very clear. In the interest of moving something forward today, I moved that the retroactivity provision be discussed in committee next week so we could get something that would draw a consensus today. Not that I was opposed to retroactivity,
understand.
but I wanted the consensus, so we acted today and didn't just put it over again.
Yeah, I understand.
So that's now.
And the retroactivity that you
It's still
that
alive,
you've
but not-
modified here is not the one that you're asking about, Mr. Watts. It's only this specific language in Section 3.
Have we taken any action yet with respect to the ordinance that would require disclosure
Not
No.
yet.
in the, of those expenditures made in the primary?
No, and in
No.
fact, because Ms. Walters moved reconsideration, and that's now before us, the question is to substitute or not again. That whole question is back before us now.
Well, you know, we can actually simplify this a lot by voting first on the short ordinance.
Yeah,
Let's
that-
rather take
exactly.
care of your problem.
Because Mike,
So-
Section 3 isn't
so-
the short ordinance.
Okay.
That's right.
so- Wait, no, it's not. It's not the short ordinance. So can we just vote on the short ordinance?
Let's just do that.
Are we ready?
Yes.
Okay.
It's-
We haven't touched the Section 3 issue, we haven't touched the substitution issue, because that applied only to
Yeah.
the long ordinance.
And Madam
So-
Chair, can we withhold at this time?
Yes, you can, as soon as you want to do that now, then we know. it
Yeah,
doesn't-
that would be my
Well,
position.
now, okay.
Okay, so we don't vote on it.
All right, we're on the short ordinance, okay? This is
As
the-
amended.
As amended. Yes, the amendments have been adopted.
And it
okay?
carries the retroactivity.
That's the one that makes it
And-
retroactive.
There's no discussion
Okay.
vote today.
Right, my understanding, I can withhold it.
Yes, you can. I just want to get us there so that we can finish it.
Okay,
I'm
well, the short
withholding.
ordinance has been
So Mr.
withheld.
Hernandez is withholding, so the short ordinance now goes over to next Friday. We now return to the issue on the long ordinance.
And I withhold on that one also, Madam.
You know, guys,
can.
I know everybody feels very emotional about this, and everybody has other things to do, but can we just try to finish it off orderly? And let me remind you, we have several items left on the agenda and 2 special meetings, and only 10 members here.
Well, you're not going to get to
So,
it today.
at this rate, I'm not even going to get to continue this one. Will you just hold on for a minute? So we will, let's take The question now is whether to substitute the version that does not include Section 3 at this time for the version that does include it, okay? We're going to take that vote, then we'll have something before us for you to withhold on, okay? So,
Ask for a no
I just
vote.
thought a confused version on what to withhold was better
Ask
than...
for a no vote.
all right, so the question is whether to substitute the
No vote.
shorter version of the long ordinance, the one that leaves out Section 3. Open the roll on substituting, whether to substitute, okay? Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
5 ayes, 5 noes.
All right, that was not approved. That leaves the motion before us is the ordinance
We were better off with
as originally presented but amended by this whole series of amendments we went through. It still includes Section 3. Right now, you wish to withhold?
Madam Chair, I am withholding, but...
That
again,
item now goes over to next Friday.
Madam Chair, and I thought I could withhold prior to the last vote that was taken, and that's where I was asking to do my withholding, because exactly what happened.
Well, but there wasn't,
You can vote, you can withhold on an ordinance.
So we now have the short and the long ones
Right.
withheld
That's correct.
on second reading next
that's
week.
correct. All
On
right?
March 4th. Excuse me, May
May
4th.
4th.
Right, that's
May
what I thought.
4th. Okay, now, members of the council, we still have item 6, which Mr. Burnson had called special.
We continue that till Tuesday?
Yes, item 6 is now continued.
One moment, please. There's a motion that is still here.
Oh, I'm
It's
sorry.
the Chick
That's right,
motion
to amend the report.
to amend the report.
Anybody leaves, the meeting breaks up.
And
so-
before you
guys
get
can
into
leave,
that,
but,
could I ask for reconsideration of 15 for the
No,
purpose
just hold on.
of voting no?
We're going to do it, Rita. I haven't forgotten
Okay.
about it. I just wanted,
We have a special also on a report.
I know we have a special, and we have 2 special meetings, so if you will stop telling me all these things, and we still, yeah, probably nobody.
The motion currently before you is the Chick Wax
All right,
motion
this was,
to request the city attorney
Attorney
prepare
to
an
draft
ordinance.
similar ordinances that will apply permanently. Open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
9 ayes, 1 no.
All right,
Yeah, Madam
that's
Chair.
approved.
Madam Chair, I'd like to be shown as a no vote.
All right, Mr. Hernandez would also like to be shown as a no vote. It doesn't change the outcome. We have, I believe, also items 21 and 2 still before us. 21 and 22?
We have items 21 and 22 that are still before you on the continuation agenda. They are
All right.
items for which public hearings have not been
All
held.
right, I have no cards on those.
Yeah.
Is there anybody who wishes to be heard? In that case, the public hearings are closed.
On
Hold
item
on.
21,
Yes, 21.
Madam Chair, I want to urge us to vote yes on item 21, but would ask that the city attorney in the future report to the entire council as to the issues, the facts of this particular case.
Okay? I
It's a
refer you
lawsuit
to the
dealing with
agenda.
billboards.
Open the roll on items 21 and 22. Close the roll, tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Those are approved. Item 6, we're continuing until, I'm sorry, Hal, when did you want to continue it to?
I don't care.
6 months?
I just wanted to get some information.
Okay, all right, so let's continue it for a week.
That'd be May 4th.
I'm sorry? May 4th,
May
right.
4th.
Now, Ms. Walters wanted to move reconsideration on item 15. Open the roll on reconsideration, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Okay, that's reconsidered. That leaves item 15 and 16 before us. Open the roll. You said you wanted to vote no on it. You called it special. No, you didn't. We didn't vote on it yet. You called it special, but we didn't vote on it yet. That's why it's still out there. So you want to vote no now, Rita, on 15 and 16. Open the roll on 15 and 16.
You want to vote no on 15 also?
That's why she wanted to reconsider it.
Okay, I thought it was 16. I'm sorry.
No, there were 2, as it turns out, okay? Open the roll on 15 and 16. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
9 ayes, 1 no.
Those are approved. That leaves us special
Here-
one.
Not on the agenda, a special one with a Burnson motion. Findings need to be made.
Madam City Attorney?
Yes, thank you. This is a special motion concerning the April 23rd death of Carolyn LaFleur, who was the ice cream vendor. The council would need to make the findings that the need to act arose after the posting of the agenda, and there's an immediate need to act. It's my understanding that the police department is asking for this for help from the public.
All right, open the roll on the findings. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
The matter is now before us. Open the roll. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
That's approved forthwith on that.
Thank you.
And then some. Okay, That, I think,
Item number 18 is a closed session item. Did you wish to hold that on the desk?
well, you tell me, Madam City Attorney. We better hold it on the desk. We need to make a game plan here, guys, because there's only 10 of us, and I see people packing up. So we do have 2 special meetings, which we can continue, can we not?
Yes, move to continue.
All right, is that okay? All right. The special meetings, after DWP sat here all day, I hope somebody's running the show over there. Both of the special meetings will be continued until, which is the shorter agenda, Tuesday or Wednesday?
Wednesday is a shorter agenda
All
at
right,
this
we're going to
point.
continue them both till Wednesday,
It's May 2nd.
May 2nd. And that leaves us, what else? Then we're,
At least your
Item
closed
18,
session
the
item.
Closed session.
okay, and we need to do that today?
Well, we have a May 15th date in terms of money if the council decides to settle this, but if you want to continue to Tuesday, if we can hear it then.
I'm willing to hear it now. It just depends how long I
Okay.
can keep 10 people, but I don't think we can.
It's a Mr. Marr case, and so
Okay.
I think it could be fast.
All right, all right, we just have to get into, we continued it until Wednesday. All right, we're going to go into executive session and attempt to deal with this briefly. Those of you not involved in the item 18, please depart, and while we're doing that, we're going to do the housekeeping items.
Motions for posting and referral?
All right, the DWP special, which one? The first one needs to be continued a week. Actually, you better continue it till the following Tuesday, because I'm not here next Friday. Continue it till...
To May 11th?
Yeah. No, that can't be right.
Uh,
Yes, that is right, I think. Yes, the 11th. That's correct.
The Tuesday after next.
Okay. So the special meeting number 1 is going to be continued to May 11th. Special meeting number 2 to whatever I said before.
You said that.
Wednesday. Okay, what else? Motions?
Motions for posting and referral?
Without objection, they are posted and referred.
And request for excuse from council attendance. Councilmember Savorni's request to be excused on May 15th, 29th, 30th, June 1st, and May 25th for personal and city business combination. A motion is required.
All right, Ms. Mizakowski moves, unanimous vote.
The desk is clear for item 18.
Okay, and we're not quite in executive session yet, although I have hopes we're getting there. Now we're open. When it comes back on the screen, then we're open. All right, we're on. Next item.
Item number 18, a request from the city attorney to authorize settlement of $400,000 in settlement of case.
All right, open the roll, close the roll, tabulate the vote.
8 ayes, 2 noes.
Okay, that's approved, forthwith on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that brings us to the end of the agenda, except for public comment. This is the time for members of the public to address the council on items not on today's agenda. We have received no cards, so the public comment period is now closed. And that, I believe, brings us to the bitter end, unless we have some adjourning motions. Do we have it? Yes, we do. All right, Mr. Burnson.
Yes, members of the council, I'd ask that we adjourn in memory of Robert Nolan, who was the former mayor of Upland and also a former Metrolink board member. He passed away on April 24th. He passed away in Washington, D.C. due to complications from recent surgery. He's survived by his wife of 48 years, Nadine, a son, and 1 granddaughter.
And I forgot, I'm sure somebody else is planning to do this as well, but I think we should adjourn in memory of the Reverend Leon Sullivan. You were going to do that? All right. Get to
I'd
you.
like to join Mr. Burnson on Mr. Nolan's adjournment motion, if I may.
All right. Ms. Mizakowski.
I would like to ask the council to adjourn in the memory of Edward Eli Steinberg. He was the father of an Encino community activist from my district, but has been very active with community policing activities. That's Marjorie Grossman. Mr. Steinberg was born and raised in New Jersey, moved to Los Angeles in 1920, and lived in Westwood for 46 years. He graduated from USC in 1924 and was the editor of Wampus, the school's humor magazine, and a member of ZBT fraternity. He was 98 years old when he died, and he had been married for 68 years to his late wife, Ruth. He had been a retired businessman in the steel industry. He is survived by his daughter, Marjorie, and 4 grandchildren.
Mr. Ridley Thomas, I want to join you on this one.
Please. All right. Madam President, members of the council, there are 3 adjourning motions. I begin with Faye Thompson Haley. Mrs. Haley was well-known and liked throughout the community. She retired from the Los Angeles Unified School District as a special education educator, and it is well known that she loved working with children. She is survived by her children, Kandashi Haley, Carker Hill Fleury, and Kimberly Haley Taylor. Additionally, Madam President and members of the council, I ask that we adjourn in memory of Ethel Mae Johnson, who was a 36-year resident of the 8th Council District. And both Ms. Galanter and Ms. Walters ask to be co-presenters, and I would ask that all members join in adjourning in memory of the Reverend Leon Howard Sullivan, the author of the Sullivan Principles, a code of conduct for American businesses in dealing with apartheid. He was one of the first African Americans to sit on major corporate boards in this country. He was here in our council chambers, as you recall, most recently advocating a set of principles, a code of conduct for American corporations who would advance social justice and corporate citizenship. This council unanimously endorsed those principles. He is survived by his wife, Grace, and his children, Hope, Howard, and Julie, the Reverend Leon Howard Sullivan.
All members on that. Ms. Walters.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'd like to ask the council to adjourn in memory of a very dear friend of mine whose name was St. Elmo Leonidas Prescott. He was the father of Patricia Prescott Marshall and Ronald Prescott, who was both were educators, rising to the level of superintendencies in the school district. Ron Prescott was the school district's lobbyist for many, many years. His father was born July 10, 1910 in Westlake, Louisiana, and married his mother in 1931. They were together 70 years. And Mr. Prescott came here to Los Angeles during the war years and worked at the Todd shipyards. And he ended his employment career at Pacific Press Printing Company after 40 years of service. In addition to leaving his devoted wife of 70 years, Willa Mae Prescott, and his daughter Patricia and his son Ronald, he leaves a sister, Irene, 4 nieces, 3 nephews, and a large extended family and a multitude of friends and admirers. This was really a man to be admired. He and his wife raised 2 wonderful children, surrounded them with love. It's so rare that you have friends at this age who talk to you as much about their parents as they do about events of the day or something that concerns them directly. And both of these, Pat Marshall and Ron Prescott, made you know their parents intimately. And I think it's a remarkable thing. It was a loving family, and Lee Prescott will be sorely missed.
Thank you. Call the roll. Thank you. We are adjourned. It is 1:45. Have a nice weekend.